Or the, well, Mr. Senior just took a hike on us.
Well, I think maybe then we ought to, do a Gregorian chant or something for a minute or two.
Well,
You want to skip to something else?
All right. Let's-
Sorry, son.
See that? We stalled long
Oh,
enough.
he's back. Here we go.
I'm back in a shift.
This is fall.
I've been waiting in line.
Right. Mr. Senior, would you help us through item 5B, assuming, of course, that we've already read your report, and I think it's very good, and I thank you for all the work that you've done for the CDD on this, but just give us the highlights, please.
Well, I'd like to also involve Scott with this presentation. This is not just me who's been involved in this. So Scott, could we do this together, please?
Certainly.
I presume Diane's not here.
She's in doing notes.
Okay, thanks. Well, Scott, you're the lead guy in this in this agenda item. If you just give us a 2-minute summary, I'll pick up wherever you want me to.
Okay. Again, we've had a lot of comments and issues and concerns and requests to upgrade our audio-visual here in the boardroom. And we started, it's been months ago, back in February, and started looking at the different options that we have, and really, let's list out what the issues are. We had issues with the residents from our TV couldn't see our broadcast. Audience couldn't hear clear enough from the supervisors, depending on their proximity to the microphone. We've had some recording difficulties, some connection interference. Our TV display is pretty antiquated nowadays, and I don't think it's enjoyable to read from anyone. So we really looked at this, and then we made a list of basically all the issues, and not only hardware but software issues as well. And then we through Mr. Senior, though, we contacted a lot of folks and brought them in and spent hours interviewing them and having them act as our expert on what we could do to upgrade our hardware and our software to get what we want to do. And what do we want? What is our goal? I kept asking that question. What's our goal? And to bring us back in focus. And we have really, Rod has a lot of information in here that boils it down to the proposal that you have here on September 23rd from Convergent, and sort of what we feel is necessary at this time to move forward. Is that a
Thank you.
overall summary there?
Yep. It's important to me to get a lot of bids in everything we do. I know you're tired of hearing me say that, but I'll continue to say it. And in this situation, it wasn't easy to get a string of bids, because when you're dealing with audio-visual, it's a very subjective matter, and every expert approaches it differently. So you can't compare apples with apples like pipes and pumps. I'll start out by saying that. The objectives are hardware and software. The hardware, Scott's gone over that. It's listed on page page 59 of the agenda. Various hardware aspects which we've itemized. Microphones, which are movable microphones for the people at this table, depending how soft-spoken or loud-spoken you are. Right now, these are static. Similarly, a very good microphone's needed there with a gooseneck for short and tall people at the podium. A better TV up there, 60-inch as opposed to that 42-inch screen with high resolution 1080 is very important for the residents in the audience. And other stuff which isn't necessary to go over, like switches and stuff that goes on in the background. Software becomes really important because firstly, we do have continuous difficulty with live streaming of meetings in here, meetings like this one. That camera's got to go further back for a wider screen. We've got to have much faster internet. Right now, it's terribly slow. We're using a company called Windstream, which is a distributor for CenturyLink, and we've got 8/8, which is non-existent speed. We've got, for the first time, we've got Comcast in here, and they've offered, even though a few years ago they were going to charge us $15,000 to install the cable to this building, now they're going to do it for nothing, which is great. And they're going to charge us $232 a month for a 3-year contract for 100/20 download upload, which is incredibly fast. And I think the staff are going to be amazed by the difference there. And that's part of this recommendation, that we get into the Comcast deal now that we're not paying up front. As far as the software is concerned, live streaming is a complex, very complicated issue. But essentially what we're trying to do is to use the existing contracts that we have and upgrade them so we can get get much more cloud storage for meetings like this. And we're doing it through Convergent, which is a recommended vendor, and very inexpensively. So that I like Convergent, as I said, because they're making use of what we have rather than trashing it, and they're updating it, and the other ones didn't. The other part of the software is to archive our meetings in such a way that they're very instantly retrievable. Diane has a terrible time trying to go back to old meetings and dig up the minutes or dig up the audio feed when there's a query. This is going to be instant, so you can go to the cloud, pick up the meeting from March the 15th this year, or it could be actually on the website, and a resident can go to the meeting of March the 15th this year and listen to it. So those are the objectives of what we're trying to do, as Scott said. Those are our goals. We went about it by interviewing 4 firms. The first firm was the one who supplies Lee County and City of Fort Myers, called Encore Broadcast. They're hugely into counties and cities in Florida, but they also are very expensive and very sophisticated, and they're based in Tampa, and for those reasons I think it was just way over the top to consider Encore Broadcast bid. Frankly, unless you really are a recording engineer, you wouldn't understand what the items were on their shopping list. So we moved quickly towards 3 other firms. One was Fiber Solutions, who did a nice job presenting to us. They came in 2 or 3 times. They had a unique approach, but they could not handle the software aspect of this project, only the hardware. And that was only half of the piece. And besides that, the hardware that they did quote for was very expensive compared with the work I did to compare them with online equivalents, which you need to do these days. That's why Amazon's so successful, and why Walmart's in the news press today was suffering because of Amazon. Best Buy for Business was the 3rd vendor. I tried very hard with Best Buy for Business because at least I'd feel that we're going to get some great pricing, because they have to be in line with bestbuy.com. So we had those guys in from their people, they're based in Minnesota, but they came in and it was really just a techie. And I think Scott would agree that there was no after sales service and support, which we would really need as a district. We need some hand-holding once this stuff's in, to be able to train and educate and support. And that wasn't going to come from Encore, it wasn't going to come from Best Buy. It would have come from Fiber Solutions, but they didn't provide the software. So it came to the 4th and successful vendor, I hope, which is Convergent. Young guy, 2 young guys, Fort Myers based, very attentive to what our needs are. They've been in here several times, smart kids, and they've been in business quite a long time. And they have found solutions and tested the solutions before they proposed to us for the software. And they, as I said, they are going to maintain our existing setup, but just they've tried to use what we have and build on it. And their quote is $15,000 versus $8,000 from Best Buy, remembering that's only hardware. And Fiber Solution was 11, and that's only hardware. Encore Broadcast was 52,000 and 32,000, so I'm afraid they were way over the top. The $15,000 that Scott and I are recommending falls inside our budget for this project, which is $25,000. Yes, I think it's $25,000.
That's correct.
That's in the budget.
Page 58, that's correct.
And I recommend that we proceed with that and with the Comcast agreement to go high-speed internet with 0 installation and $242.80 a month.
Will you make a motion to that effect?
I would make that motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a second? I'd like to ask you two questions that came to mind as I went through this list of equipment. One is, I thought it would have been positive to have what I call a lavalier microphone. I can remember Mr. Burton up here at this TV trying to take us through some of his calculations, but he didn't have what I call a lapel or a lavalier microphone. And did you consider purchasing one of those as part of this?
Yes, and that can be done. We have an audio-video switcher that allows a presenter to come to the podium either in person or remotely if they're to attend a meeting by Skype. They can present a memory stick or a laptop and switch it into the system, or a lapel mic, and it can be heard by this room as well as the live streaming.
That's great. Second thing was, did you consider having a camera put in this corner that could focus in directly on the people at the podium?
Yes, we did, and actually, the reason it wasn't, the reason why we didn't do that is because we feel by moving that back one or two tiles, we can capture the presenter without having to go to the expense of a $5,000 camera, which is what it would be.
You can capture
The
the back. You can capture the back of his head.
Yeah, but
You
you
can
can't
capture the bald spot.
It's a
That's
question
it.
of, you can capture the bald spot, but it's a question of whether we want to spend $5,000. It can add it on. It's an add-on if we want to. If we really feel it's important, we can add it to it.
Okay,
Don't you
thank-
need a switcher though, for that,
Like you said, you have a switcher.
There is a switcher.
An audio-video switcher.
between the two cams?
Honestly, Gary, I don't know the answer, but we can ask.
I think you do.
But it's an extra $5,000 for a camera like that, and I thought widening it would be cost effective rather than installing it.
Okay, well, we can probably try it the way it's recommended, but we may want to do some further considerations later on. Any other questions from the board?
I just want to ask, where do you intend to, are you going to wall mount the TV?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's going to be where it is on an articulated mount. It's roughly where it is, one of those swivels, side to side, up and down.
Okay,
And it's 60-inch versus 42 diagonal.
okay.
70's too big. We've done a cardboard replica.
Yeah, it probably is.
I'm sorry, excuse me, I think you were finished.
And I hate that, we have to use Comcast, but so do we. They just have the best deal. But it's a good
100
idea.
100
Yeah,
download
yeah, they
and
have the
20
best, yeah, they
uploads
do,
very
yeah,
fast.
yeah, they are
And they are
better.
going to install it for nothing, which is, I'm not going to go into how we did it, but they're going to do it.
No, they have the best thing going right now. They do.
I'd understand. Thank you, thank you.
If there are no other questions, I'll call for a vote on the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Motion's carried. Thank you very much, Rod. I appreciated that so much. I'm going to let you go to 5C, hiring of Ramba Consulting Group, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here is an item that was raised 2 weeks ago. It goes back to this individual that we hired, Joe DeCervo, and to give us some help with the process by which we're managing this district and some human resources aspects of it. And part of Joe DeCervo's report, one of many of his recommendations was to try and get some state funding for all these expensive projects that we're running, like lake banks. Because it does affect the water quality, which eventually affects 6 Mile Cypress Slough and then Estero Bay Aquatic Preserve, and it can be shown that improving water quality attracts interest in Tallahassee. David Ramba is the recommended lobbyist, recommended by Joe DeCervo, and he has very strong connections with the powers that be in Tallahassee, in particular our senator and our representative, and Matt Caldwell and Elizabeth Benequisto. The chairman asked me a couple of weeks ago to get some more information on David Ramba's group, and they are available on a cell phone number if any of the board wants to ask a question during this topic. They're at the end of a phone. Please feel free to dial this 850 number. Ramba I've met the guy, and I've been given a 75% confidence level that, based upon his track record, he can achieve some success with this. You can never get a lobbyist to give a 100% guarantee. We've never done this, as far as I know, Tony, we've never gone after state funding like this in 29 years as a district.
Yeah, to my knowledge, I'm not aware of the district ever hiring a lobbyist,
Okay.
and or for this activity. to my knowledge.
He has cited 3 specific funds that we can tap into, or he can try and get a piece of. One is $427 million that's sitting in a surplus sales tax fund, which is designated for water quality improvement initiatives. $594 million for Water and Land Legacy Fund for stormwater-related projects, and finally the BP settlement. The BP settlement was decided on October the 5th, $20.8 billion spread across 5 states. Some of that is earmarked for those who can show cause, which we cannot. I think this board decided this some time ago, that we can't show cause, that we were affected by the Deepwater Horizon. However, there is a big chunk of that which is a direct find, meaning that we don't have to show cause. And David Ramba feels that we can be quite successful, in his opinion, in getting some of that BP fine, and it's worth going for it. His fees for this is $2,000 a month for a 12-month contract, and for that money he will do the appropriate preparation of the application, which is needed by November the 15th, because the Legislative Assembly is in January next year. It's usually in April. So we've got to decide today if we're going to do this, to give David a chance to do the application.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yes. Finally, I was just going to say that part of that contract, Tony, would be that David is prepared to assist you and this district as appropriate for any other initiatives that we would like some help with in Tallahassee, like Statute 190 amendments or Attorney General opinions, stuff like that. He's prepared to throw that in with
Very
it.
good. And so if we were to add this to the scope of it?
Yes,
over time?
yes,
Very good.
that's okay with him. So that's all I want to say, and they are available on the phone if there's any questions.
Would you make a motion to approve that recommendation?
I would, yes, I think it's worth trying this.
May I have a second?
Sure.
And I have a second. How about some conversation?
Well, I just think it would have been nice if we could have all spoke with this person and you know, it's a little bit off-putting when you have a sales pitch and you have to sign it today,
Yeah.
you know?
The problem, Pam, is that we have a sunshine law. I met the guy, he flew in to private sky from Tallahassee to meet me. I couldn't invite you anyway because of the sunshine law.
Well, we could have probably called a meeting. We could have had a special meeting called for all of us to meet with this person. This is a decision that takes all 5 of us, and we need to be included on these types of decisions. This is a big decision here.
It's a sizable contract.
It's a $24,000 contract, and they're prepared to answer any questions you have by phone.
Margaret? I'm sorry, I'm not pushing.
No, I mean, I actually, with the $24,000, how much do you anticipate, how much funding do you anticipate that he will realistically be able to
Well, I would answer
acquire
that.
for us?
I would answer that 2 ways. First of all, I'd prefer you to ask that question over the phone with them, and they're ready to answer that question if you have it. But bearing in mind, he cited 5 companies or 5 entities that he has got funding for in the last 12 months. One of them was Spring Lakes Improvement District, Joe DeSobo's Sebring district in Sebring.
Correct.
And he got for them a total of $500,000. But I don't think it's fair to ask me what I think they'll get. I think you should ask them.
Dial the phone.
I will,
Let
I'll
him
take
ask.
care of it.
Let him ask.
It's fine. I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, I have signed a lot of contracts like this in the past, and they are always on what is called a best efforts basis. And I was surprised that that terminology was not used in his letter. Best efforts basis, I probably don't have to explain to you what that means. It means that they'll do what they can for us, but it won't guarantee anything. And I share Pam's view that I like to see a person and look at somebody if I'm gonna give them a contract of this size. That doesn't mean I'm gonna vote against this, but I'm just telling you my very strong preference. Having said that, would you like for us to get Mr. Ramble on the phone?
I'd like, the person who's available is his policy advisor, Sue Mullins, and she's the one who constructed this response to you.
Are we gonna do 727, 7087?
No, that number there.
Okay, Scott, would you, assuming the majority of the board wants us to contact?
Yeah,
that's
Yes?
fine.
Yes? Would you do this 855-98,000 for us, please?
Having said that, I wanna know if that 60-inch screen will be able to Skype.
Yes,
Would that be cool?
it would be, we're gonna be able to switch.
That way, we
Skype.
need to have it so it rolls around and looks at the board.
Correct, and we did
And we
address
can
that.
Skype things.
Yeah.
What? You just.
Let's,
We'll put another one up there, small? No, not a smaller one. We wanna be like
You want
Billy
an issue?
Fusillo, 100-inch.
Huge.
Yeah, huge.
Ah,
Yeah, so you're avoiding our calls, huh?
Scott, what's the callback number?
That was the number that,
No, what's the callback number?
I'm sorry, I missed your call, but leave your number and I'll call you right back.
it's a direct call. You can try.
Hi, Sue, this is Rod, Senior from Gateway Services. We'd like to ask some questions, please. Could you try and be available in, say, 15 minutes at 5 o'clock Eastern? Thank you.
Did you give her a number to call?
No, I'm gonna call her back. I'm gonna call you back at 5 o'clock, Pat. Thanks, Sue.
Why don't you leave that right here, so.
So I suggest we leave this 15 minutes and move on and revisit that.
That's a good
Just a
idea.
minute, Pam has a finger.
I have a finger. I'd like to ask our legal advisor, what his opinion is, and were you able to look at the contract?
I've had an opportunity to review it, and the comments, I think that if the board decides to go ahead and engage the services of this firm for lobbying purposes, we would add the additional scope of services to assist in any requested changes or review or monitoring changes to Chapter 190 Florida statutes, which I think your duration. Also, to the extent that they would assist with the Attorney General's request, that would help. If no, that would help on the board's already. Adding the best appropriate, want to ask for it, sort of ask to the, and if the board feels they want to have a termination clause, put that in there too. I mean, so if you want to, I don't know if you've discussed those with him, but that's one way. If after 6 months you think you're not getting the results, you can always say in 30 days, we're gonna terminate it. With that being said, yeah, lobbyists cannot guarantee results. I think we all understand that. I think it's good to have a voice in Tallahassee on certain issues. If there's a large pool of state money, whether it be in the form of the BP fine, whether it be in surplus proceeds, the only way you're ever going to try to get any checks written out of those funds is to have somebody who knows the corridors in Tallahassee. It has been called the Puzzle Palace, it's been called Disneyland North, it has been called Fantasyland. It has all kinds of myriad names, besides being extremely difficult to get to from anywhere, other than Tallahassee, to get to Tallahassee. I think it's there's never guaranteed, but from my opinion and my experience dealing with other governmental clients who retain lobbyists, I think it's a venture.
That being said, is it possible that we could change and add the language to the contract that we would like to do, and then we could move forward with that?
Would you write down the things that you just mentioned?
The best efforts language that you mentioned,
And
the adding that it would help with
190
assist in
help.
Chapter 190 issues, as well as to the extent requested on the Attorney General's opinion
Why don't you
request.
let Tony be the one that asks the questions? That way he, that
If
we
we-
haven't neglected to ask something.
If we are able to talked to
Right.
her today at
But
quarter.
rather than,
You haven't met the lady, have you?
No, I have not.
Yeah, and monthly reports and termination upon 30 days' notice.
I know,
think
they may,
that's a
ha-
good
they,
thing.
they may balk at the termination on 30 days' notice on a brand-new deal that they're trying to put together for us.
After 6 months, maybe.
And I wouldn't,
Okay.
I wouldn't
Yes,
push
okay.
on that.
I would.
Pam,
I
want-
think after 6 months, I think that that's a reasonable thing. If we invest half of the time period and we find that we're not getting the results, I can't imagine that somebody that feels that they've got credibility would balk at that.
The reason why I mentioned the 6 month is that the legislature does meet early, as Mr. Senior has indicated, and they'll have the budget and the state appropriations all wrapped up by March to the governor, probably. And so the governor will take his veto pen out probably in April.
Yeah.
So that should get you past the appropriations and the budget process. That's my thinking. And I don't want
That's
to
too,
follow Mr. Senior's waters, though, that he's already.
I think it's important, Pam, I want to say this, and when you're doing something new like this, I can understand that people see it as a bit of a gamble, you know, but when you talk to people like Joe DeSerbo and people who are used to this and have gone through this country, you know, have had these people as part, they regard it as a cost of doing business, as opposed to a gamble. And I think it's important to distinguish that. There's a lot of money at stake if we can get it, which makes $2,000 a month.
Well, I'm not calling this a gamble. What I'm looking at is a contract that works in our favor. Okay,
Okay.
this is
Or-
a business also,
Let's just say it works as fair.
as fair, exactly. So if
Okay.
we could make those changes, I see that we could possibly move forward today if we have to do that. I would feel more comfortable with that wording.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the termination, Mr. Guy may have a good point, you know, they may balk at that, and that's something we'll.
yeah, I really don't like that termination the way, we've been discussing it for a couple reasons. And your, summary of the appropriation process, while it's technically correct, there is often a lot of money held over, what they call lapse funds from the year before that they want to put out the door before, as long as they can. And,
No, your point's well taken, because the state budget's on a different year.
Yes.
They're a 7/1 to 6/30 fiscal
Yeah.
year. And so that's a point well taken, that their budget years expire June 30th. So to the extent you have funds, yeah, the rush to get the cash out the door is gonna be June.
But I
Fair
would
statement.
imagine, you know, you're supposing that person that we're communicating with or hope to communicate with should be able to explain that to us as well.
I think she should.
And I'd be a little bit more impressed rather than speculative.
please
to
try
hear
and get
from the
Sue for
source.
us.
That's true.
Thanks, Gary.
Will you start off the conversation?
Yeah, well, yes, thank you.
And then immediately introduce Bill.
Hi, this is Sue.
Hello, Sue, this is Rod.
Hey, sorry about that. I just couldn't get to my phone fast enough.
That's okay, we can hear you clearly. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, sir.
Sue, you're on a loudspeaker. We've got a board meeting going on here. It's 10 to 5. And we just wonder if you could give us 10 minutes of your time, please.
Give you, of course.
Okay, we've gone over briefly the proposal to hire your services for 12 months. And we've looked at the documentation you kindly sent to us as to your track record. One or two board members have a few questions. Our attorney, Tony Pius, also has a question, I think, as well. So would you mind if I could have passed this telephone around and to invite some questions, please, if you could try and give them a reasonable answer.
I'd be delighted.
Thank you.
Stu, this is Bill Guy, Chairman of the Board. I've read your contract, and I was surprised that you didn't use the terminology best efforts basis, which I am familiar with in signing off on contracts similar to this. May I assume that this is what I call a best efforts contract?
Absolutely. Basically, You know, we keep errors and omissions type insurance and such as that, and so, you know, I think we don't typically always include that, and clearly if a proposed client wants to include that in their own stock contracts, then we absolutely go along with it, so it is essentially the same.
Thank you. Our attorney, Tony Burris, has a question or two about helping us with Chapter 190 issues. Would you, he'd like to speak to you now, please.
Hello, Sue. Tony Pierce. How are you, Sue? Hello?
Good, thanks.
Good. Yeah, Mr. Senior, I think, had discussions with Mr. Ramba with regards to some additional scope of work services to be outlined in this agreement. One would be to monitor Chapter 1, changes to Chapter 190, and possibly even assist in making some possible changes to Chapter 190. Dealing with community development. And so we would include that in the scope of services. And another aspect was we are in the process, I've been authorized to work with Mr. Senior to the general opinion request on a particular issue, and I think Mr. Senior spoke with Mr. Rambo about that. To the extent that I would need to call you or anyone else in your organization to assist in that submittal and any other communications with the AG's office. That's another point we would want to have in there. And we had some discussion with regards to, I mentioned about maybe monthly reports, status reports on your efforts on behalf of the CDD.
Okay.
Are any of those objectionable, or are there any issues?
No, that's completely within what I would think of as the scope. Now, we haven't, David hasn't talked to me specifically about amending chapter, but clearly, we typically do is a pre-session interview with you guys, and that could mean, you know, mainly probably you, sir, as the attorney, but also the people of what statutes affect you. From that, then what I do is kind of the lead policy researcher, is I track any statutory changes that are proposed in any proposed legislation. So when it comes to the House or the Senate, I'm automatically notified as soon as anything is filed along those lines.
Very good.
For that, we will have, you know, done a lot of outreach to folks who we think could be trying to affect change to any of your statutes of interest. So it could be 190, it could be 373. There's a whole host that probably affect you a great deal. So, so in that way, we prepare in advance and then work through basically taking the position that you want us to and amending it if necessary. So that's a normal practice. And then with doing something, you know, kind of in advance in terms of one is making some major changes if that's what you wish. That's perfectly fine. I would have to check with David to see if that was going to take any extraordinary scope, like us bringing legislators down to meet with you, et cetera, and if that's going to, you know, incur any extra costs or any extra effort that might change to some extent the compensation. And I just don't have an answer for you for that right now. I'm not sure how he handles that, you know, going in. If we're going to do a bill, I don't know if he conceived of that, and Mr. Senior, you may know if that's something you've spoken with him specifically about. That may already be included. But either way, we'll work with you, you know, as they say, soup to nuts on these issues and changing or amending or responding to legislative proposals.
Yeah, and Sue, on that, I guess the answer then is yes, and we can outline that in the scope of services. And as far as any major changes to 190, I'm not sure that's envisioned within the scope of this, but it's more of starting and laying the groundwork for future years as to that. And I think the idea of a pre-legislative session, I think would be wonderful if someone, the scope of services would include someone would come down to meet with the board as a whole. So the board can articulate as a whole what they want you to help and assist in monitoring, and then we can also clarify the contact personnel. Is that something that?
Well, that would be enormously helpful to me and to us, absolutely. Nothing worse than getting caught in the podium testifying on a bill and you don't know where your client is on something. So I would rather have an abundance of information and be able to know exactly where you are on things and be able to react as we need to in conversations with legislators, in testimony, in written comments, etc. So yes, I would welcome the chance to do that.
So, Sue, I did speak to David specifically about laying the groundwork, as Tony said, making, with interpretations or, and possible amendments to 190 as part of this contract, and he said he
Oh,
would be,
perfect.
he said he would be willing to include that.
Okay, lovely.
Okay, and I
That
think,
would be my inclination, so good, glad to hear that.
okay, and Sue, I think, this is Tony Pierce again, I believe I heard in the long list of services you'll be providing when you expanded on it would be monthly status reports as well as any updates that occur, I'll call it real time, with the legislature.
Yeah, and I meant, yes, sir, and I meant to get to that in my last answer, but yes, what we do is a, kind of a standard monthly report on issues of interest, topical things that are coming up in the media or in conversations at the cabinet or whatever. And then as we get closer to session, we file reports during all the committee hearing weeks. So this upcoming week, for example, and last week, there was committee hearings held, and so if any of the issues that we're following for you as they came up, or conversations that we had in advancing your issues, then we report on that for every committee week. And then weekly during session, we will give you, even if not much happens, we try to send you something that just kind of tells you what the political tenor is and the issues that are kind of leading the moment, and maybe that make ours take a backseat, or maybe ours suddenly came to the fore because of something completely unrelated. So we like to kind of keep you in the loop on a weekly basis at that point until you're just tired of us. And then we can always do, quick conference calls, or just if someone is a specific liaison from your side that wants to speak with me or David on a weekly basis, we can do that.
Sue, I don't think we'll get tired of you. I think the more the better. One other aspect that I brought up, and you can go slap the attorney for the board for the suggestion, was that because it is a new arrangement, and we recognize that you guys have some great talent with your firm, that the possibility of having a 30-day termination clause after July 1st, if we wish to terminate after that point in time.
Yeah, that's absolutely no problem. Typically we do it on kind of a yearly basis so that we're well prepared going into session. Of course, session is a little funky this year because it starts in January instead of March. And so we typically conclude the month after session because then we like to do all the wrap-ups, and we like to know, what the governor has signed or vetoed in budgets, et cetera, and do a full analysis for you for your own preparation. Or if you wanted to renew or extend a contract with us, then you're fully prepared, what's what.
Okay, the reason I mentioned July 1st, the chairman made an astute point about at times towards the end of the state's fiscal year, there might be monies not yet expended, and there might be a rush to get the cash out the door. So that's why I was thinking that, there wouldn't be that 30-day opportunity to terminate within 30 days notice until after July 1st. Would that be reasonable?
Well, that's a very good point, and just I mentioned too that as monies are swept, the very month after that, there's this a whole other entity, the Legislative Budget Commission, which is a group of people made of legislators and other staff, state economists, et cetera. They actually meet to discuss monies that are swept, trust funds that are unencumbered, and things like that, so that they can look at usually agency budget requests, but sometimes specific line items. I'll just say, like in the case of a hurricane or some other catastrophe where we suddenly have to, rebuild a number of roads or something, we would go to the LBC, the legislative budget request, and make some kind of a play for whatever the monies that are coming through, so that whether it's in your district or somewhere else, we can get the proper remedies to things at the moment that we need it.
Thank you so very much, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sue, thank you so much,
The
and
ladies may have a question.
I asked the question.
Pam, you okay?
No, Pam, are you?
I'm pretty much, I'm okay.
Yeah.
No, Margaret?
How many CDDs do you represent?
I believe you guys are the only CDD with because Spring Lake is an improvement district, which is a little different. And then we have community-based care districts, which are specific social service districts. So I believe you guys are currently our only CDD. And just to remind you, I'm not sure if you got all the material or we actually included this, but David, for a number of years, has represented the entire special districts people, the Association of Special Districts, whatever they're called, I forget now what they're called, but so he's, even if we're not representing someone specific right now, he's very well aware of the issues that special districts confront all the time.
It's good to hear.
Betty, that's,
Okay.
Yeah, you're referring to the Florida Association of Special Districts, Sue?
That's the one, that's the one.
And David Ramzondi is a supervisor on the Capital Region CDD in Tallahassee as well.
Okay.
He's an attorney as well,
Yeah.
he's in our position in a CDD in Tallahassee.
yeah, in this work.
Excuse me.
There was only one last thing that I wanted to capture the mood of the board, Sue. There were a few comments where this has all happened pretty quick. I was the one who met with David, and I do appreciate that he flew down to meet me. A very pleasant lunch we had. But they felt that perhaps it would have been nice to involve the whole board, but it just didn't work out that way, given the fact that we've got certain sunshine laws, we can't all meet together, and we have to, I guess it's fair to say you have to meet a November the 15th deadline, is that right?
Well, that's correct, and to be fair, it really probably could have been done much differently, except if you and David had talked months ago, simply because they moved up that legislative start date, and therefore all of the activities within committees and legislative proposals by month. So, unless you guys had talked about this 6 months ago, there's probably not much you could have done about it. But, we don't want to go any later, just on your behalf. Because if we want proposals in, we want to get them in now. We want to advance them with all the key legislators, get them down to look at projects and talk with experts, et cetera, and get some buy-in. So that's kind of the immediate issue that we're looking at. And again, it's usually not quite that way because of the way the legislative schedule normally runs.
Right, so we understand that. This is Bill Guy again, the chair of the board. I believe that if you will send a contract with the adjustments that have been suggested today, send it to me in care of the Gateway CDD at your earliest opportunity, that the attorney and I will go through and make sure that we're happy, and if I can get a favorable vote from the board in a few minutes, I think we'll have a contract. Thank you very much for your time and your help.
There was a question, Bill. One of the supervisors, Sue, has asked if David is in the area or could Skype in. It would be nice to see a face-to-face. Would that be normal as part of this procedure?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because David has his own plane, chances are we would both come down and I would go ahead and do my pre-session interviews and figure out where we are on all of the issues and where, to prioritize, et cetera. And that way David can meet with whomever is available.
I think everybody would like to put a face to the name.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Sue. That's all for
Thanks, Doug.
that's all for right now. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to conclude this item with an affirmative vote from the board, with the understanding that we'll be receiving a contract in the next few days, and that Mr. Perez and I will go over it and make sure that all of the items that the board members have outlined are included in that. Assuming that is the case, I'll be happy to sign the contract on the board's behalf if you will vote in favor of this item. May I have a?
Is that a motion?
Yeah,
I think we already have a
We
motion.
already had a motion
And
and
a
a second,
second.
and I'm
Oh,
looking,
okay, I'm
I'm
sorry,
looking
I
for a
lost
vote
that.
now. May I have a vote? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
5-0, thank you very much. The next item that I'm looking at on this agenda is a modular office building, 5D. And I've read a fairly detailed bit of business that I believe Yvonne put together, and I'd like for you to very rapidly go through this for us.
Yeah.
Understanding that last time I was in the shop area, it hadn't been cleaned out, so I guess you aren't anticipating that we're gonna approve this. But in the event that we do, how long is it gonna take to get it together, and how are you gonna handle the air conditioning?
Oh, this modular unit, they have their own air conditioning down there. is a wall-mounted unit. They have two options. One, the window-mounted, which we don't like, but there is a split unit that is wall-mounted. Is very efficient. It's like a Mitsubishi. I don't know if you have seen them. That is very efficient for this type of facility. So it's independent of this air conditioning here. So what we are proposing to do is to set. I don't know if you have gone into big warehouses. They have sometimes offices inside the warehouses. Sometimes it's in the second floor. Sometimes it's in a base with windows in the front, so they can work down there, free of noise, free of dust, and with air conditioning. And that's basically what this is it. The company that sells them they pre-wire the entire unit, and it comes in the truck, and they assemble that. We have to provide a connection because everything is pre-wired. We will connect to our electrical service, which electrical service we already checked it out, and has a capacity to accept this office. It's not very big, and the same is for the telephone and a computer. We will have to add the floor. Maybe what we do is paint the floor with some epoxy paint or something like that, because it's mostly for the personnel, and provide the furniture and computers and a working station that we have to have down there. As you realize, on there is kind of dusty, noisy, smelly because of the sewage treatment plant. The employees that we have in the field, they have only 30 minutes for lunch, and that's the area that they have to use for lunch because there is another place. When they have to make a phone call, there is a phone on there in the back. They have to stand on there, and they don't have any place to write or nothing. They don't have a place where they can connect a computer or work if they have to work for a computer. However, in the last 2 years, we have had added additional employees. Right now, we are crowded, and with the 2 new employees that we hired this year, we are in a worse situation.
We're in
So-
a worse situation, is that what you said?
Yeah, worst, because of the crowding. We don't have adequate space for employees. So that's what we are proposing that. This is a very quick and cheap solution to the problem. As you recall, last year, when we prepared fiscal year 15 CIP, I came with a plan that was to add another office and had the second floor as a mezzanine for storage and so on. And it was not approved. They asked us to come back with a better plan, but you cannot prepare plans if you don't have budget. So this doesn't require any design. The company that supplies that, they provide all the services, the installation and everything, so we don't have to do anything but do the electrical installation. It's very inexpensive, can be done real quick, and for now can satisfy our needs.
Okay, let's listen to questions from the board members,
Yes.
please. How about Pam start? Pam, would you like to start?
Can I defer to Margaret?
Margaret?
How many employees do you anticipate being in there, and who, I guess I'm asking, who are you gonna move into there for office space?
Well-
Is it the utility department or?
No, everyone. As you realize, all of our field employees, they don't have an office.
Mhm.
We have a couple of working stations down there next to Diane, which is a hallway. It's where they are working. So these fellows that work down there is normally Anthony, and sometimes the lady that works for the pool Holly comes here and work, so she can work from there. We have Terry. Terry has to do reports, and you have to see Terry finding a place to do reports or whatever. And we have Mary. Mary has to come with a meter and all the stuff. She had to plug everything in the computer. She had to work with the meter. She doesn't have a working station. The other fellows, they are field workers, but need a place to, if they have to make a phone call or they have to write a report, they need a place where they can do it. So they are 3, 4, 5, 6 people. 7 with Terry.
And will the 2 workstations here be removed that are?
I believe that will be my recommendation because it's not proper where it is. So Diane can have more room than there for her operation.
Now I have questions.
Please.
So, exactly how big is this area going to, these offices?
The office, 20 by 16 by 20, yeah.
16 by-
It's not very big.
What types of materials is this going to, are they using? Is this wood framed?
It has some kind of wood combination, metals,
Metal.
aluminum, and if you see here in the, it's aluminum frame with a, I don't know if you were able to see the picture here.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So there are some windows here, no windows, they are not, you cannot open them, but they opening so you can see outside, and the rest is aluminum and 2 doors.
And what type of guarantee are they giving you guys?
This is standard 1 year warranty.
Just 1 year?
Yeah.
Well, how long do they think that this unit, what's the lifespan of this unit?
This is something that I didn't ask for the longevity.
Mhm.
I don't believe that this is going to last 50 years or anything like that, but at least I assume that this district is going to keep on growing.
Mhm.
And the reason that we are using something like that is that in the future, when you really need to expand, you can eliminate this facility and do it right. Because this is something temporary.
So would you say it's
Yeah,
about a
10
10-year?
years or whatever,
10-year
you know, it would be-
lifespan? Okay,
Mhm.
okay, thank you.
In this way, it would not be something permanent you can do in the future. Do it
Thank you, Adam. I've got a few things. First of all, could we lease it?
What?
Could
I'm
we
sorry?
lease a posting?
I don't think so.
Have we asked?
No, I don't believe that this is for lease. They sell it to you. This is installed. This is embedded in the concrete and all this stuff. It's not a modular building that you have wheels and
Right.
those ones you can lease.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Is there an alternative to this? Because I heard what you said a minute or two ago about where we're heading as a district.
Mhm.
I think there's a bigger picture I want to address here.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
You know, I realize, Joe DeSerbo picked up on this. On his first visit, he said he couldn't believe how everybody was crammed into this place. And I understand you've got more people now. And you know, I'm thinking about where all this is going. I've got a couple of ideas which is way outside the scope of this meeting about how to become more professional in terms of accommodation. And I do want to address that, but not today. So I just want to come back to what's on the table, which is this thing. It's
That's correct.
$75 a foot. It's $24,000 for 320 square feet.
Okay.
That's quite high.
Well, an office building would be about
One that's permitted and built is $100 a foot,
$200 a foot,
but
250.
100 commercial.
Well, I don't think so.
Let's
you
not
can,
debate
you can
it.
build a house for that,
And we have a real estate
another
guy.
office building.
I have a real estate guy to my left, I'll defer to him on that. But it just seems, I was just wanting to make sure, did you get all other bids?
No, I didn't get any other bids.
Why not?
Because this is kind of unique. These people were the only one that responded to our request, and we checked in the internet and all this stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
One company?
Well, if I want to go for bid, I have to prepare plan specifications and make
Oh, I
it
see.
equal.
I mean,
Compare apples to
no,
apples.
maybe I used the wrong
Yeah.
word. Quotes.
No, this is the only quote I got.
Okay. So you don't think let's just say that within the next 24 months, we're able to
Okay.
put forth a more professional way of accommodating our staff than where we are today, and I'd like to address that. We talked about a Camp David retreat a few months ago.
Yeah.
This is something that we need as a board to do, because we've got to address this thing, and I've got some ideas, and I'm sure the rest of the board have.
Oh,
And I just
of
don't
course.
want to charge down this avenue of temporary cabins without thinking this through.
Well, let me interrupt you here. That was my idea, not from where you're coming. My idea was to have something done right. Do it right, and I came to the board, and they told me, no, go back to the drawing table and come with a different plan. So I'm with a different plan here.
But, okay, but the question to ask again, I'm sure Rod's getting into it, but I'm gonna break right in.
Sure.
What was that number that we, the board,
Was over $200,000.
and what did it entail, the summary version?
The summary version was to take over, what I thought was in the future, we can expand the building as another bay, but during the meantime, we can expand the office area towards one of the
And shift
bays,
the
take
wall
over
back.
the bay, completely enclosed with proper wall, proper construction, building with the material, concrete material. So you can go from the stairway on top also and use the top as a mezzanine for storage.
Correct.
and all this stuff open with guardrail, and underneath, you have a properly done office. So if we need more space on there, what we do, we expand the building, add another bay to the building, because this building is a pre-engineering building, it's very easy to do.
Correct.
And that's what I thought that we can do. And you can connect to the bathroom, because in the back there is another bathroom, and connect to the exit door, and go through I am sure that the fire department is going to have requirements for this and that, and
Right.
satisfy all of these
You mean
needs.
like a sprinkler?
Well, I don't know if it's required, because we don't have a sprinkler here.
I know we don't, yes. Part of our previous engineering.
Yeah, I believe that there are some limitations. After you exceed certain amount of square feet, then you are required to have sprinkler system.
Correct.
What was the answer you gave to an earlier question? How many people could sit in this 320 square foot?
I say
space?
about 6 people.
6 people in
Yeah.
300 square foot?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
What you have is a workstation. They are not going to be there all day long. They are
Okay.
going to come and go, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you've answered my questions. I really would be interested in your comments. You're a real estate guy. Tell me, what do you think?
In this particular case, I'm sorry, budgetarily and because of the fact that we're expanding, I think we're putting a Band-Aid over something that really needs to be properly fixed.
That's correct. I know. I agree.
And I wish I could come up with we could do this now, but this, great work. But we need to finally have a heart-to-heart with ourselves and tell ourselves, we need to give them the adequate space that they need. And in addition to this deters from the storage space, which we have a problem and have had a problem with storage space in the 7 years that I've been here and years before that. So we're going at this backwards. And we need to take the step, and as Rod stated before, if we're spending $240,000 on those soccer fields out there, we owe $200,000, if that's the number,
That was a
to
rough
our
number.
staff to get them adequate, proper space to function.
Yeah, I can pull the estimates I did last year.
I'm just
but
working with
yeah.
round numbers.
Yeah.
That's my input.
No, I agree with you. You know, in reality, this is a patchwork. This is to solve a problem that we have now.
I'm not in favor of patchwork.
Yeah.
I'd rather come to grips with
I-
the big
No.
picture.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm with Gary. I want to help you, but I don't think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, well,
But
I prefer to do it the other way.
We're still outnumbered, we'll see what happens with that, but in any case, you could tell the rest of the staff that our intentions are to try to do something different.
It sounds to me as though the board would like to have a more comprehensive plan that may take us into the future in a more
Okay.
comprehensive way.
So,
Why don't you give us back your plan again?
yeah, well, you know, what about if we retain the services of a consultant to give us a rendering, a preliminary
Wait a while, I don't
design?
need a rendering, I can figure that out real quick myself. What I need is somebody like you that's working with staff that can give us a direct input. We've already had the input with Joe DeCervo, who I greatly respect. I think that it's rather evident. We need to push back, we need to make adequate space for the staff that we have.
Okay,
I couldn't
Sure.
say it better. The other thing that we need to always take into consideration is that a goodly number of the folks that you're trying to provide space for should be spending a lot of their time in the field.
exactly. That's why we can put them in this small space, because they are supposed to be in the field.
Okay, will you take this back and take another shot at it, please?
Yes, sir.
When you mention that, though, let me ask, do we have the adequate digital equipment that while they're out there in the field, that they have the capability of doing all this input data on digital type devices? No, we do not.
I was gonna say, are you gonna answer that for us?
No, we do not.
We haven't
That's
gotten to
something
the
else that
21st
we're
century yet.
tremendously lacking in. We need to have that.
Yeah,
So that when it comes to things like keeping logs of vehicles, when it comes to keeping logs of the work that they're doing and that type of thing, which then spills over into, we need another staff member. Show me the numbers. Well, the numbers are right there. They've got them digitally. They've instantly got it, and we're a professional organization now.
Let's start
What's our
acting
annual budget?
like it, right?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, We're on track.
Yeah,
Hey.
well, you know, I used to work for a place that everybody in a truck, they have a laptop. That's the truck. So,
Thank
Yvonne, you've got some support apparently.
okay,
Thank you, Yvonne.
Okay.
We'll look forward to working with you in the future on this.
all right,
again.
thank you. May I stay here
Uh,
for the next one?
Are you gonna do pumps too?
Yes, sir.
Well, let's get
This
with
has been
them.
my headache for the last 2.5 weeks. As you are aware, we have been budgeting certain amount of money to replace pumps. This is something that we do, the R&R. But for some reason, in the last 2.5 weeks, it's one pump after another failing, failures. My professional opinion, the reason for the failure is, one, the quality of the pumps that the district purchased.
That we have just bought?
They are about 4 years old or 3 years old, and they are failing. And second, the selection of the pumps, when they selected the pump that they acquired was not the right pump and they are not working efficiently. What we are having problem is the impellers are cracking, the shaft are breaking, everything is failing. So at least Tetra Tech completed the computer model for the sewer system. At least we have information as to which are the right pumps to put in the system. And what I'm recommending is that those 4 stations that we are having problem, we replace the pumps, which we had to do an emergency purchase, and it's including the memo for $14,977 to replace the pumps at the pump station that is next to the 7-Eleven. So they both fail, and we have to purchase them right away and replace them. We have the pump station here in Bristol Park that right now is operating with only one pump. Those pumps are only 3 years old. Normally a pump lasts about 15 years, between 10 to 15 years. And right now it's working with one pump, and they are going to bring another pump and let us use it temporary. The contractor is doing that. We have another pump, B1 next to the Garner building, this high flow pump that we went over there and the pump was there and the other portion of the pump was there. It came apart. Have you ever seen that? It's amazing. So I look at the pumps and all this stuff. In my opinion, we need to standardize and get good quality pumps. There are 2 pumps that I know of that they are very good. We have some of them in our system. Is a Flight or ABS. This proposal that I have here, or this pump that we are replacing here, is 2 ABS pumps. It's a good manufacturer. We should avoid buying the other PX and Ibarras and all these other pumps. In my opinion, they are not the same quality. So what I'm doing now is I would like for you guys to approve this emergency purchase that I already did and installed. And also, I am getting proposals from Xylem. Xylem is a distributor for flights. That's what I came out, because I was talking to him on the phone. And also, I'm talking to the representative from ABS, getting quotes for both of them to replace the pumps. I got one already, so you know the magnitude of the cost. So you don't get surprised when I come back.
May
I have the
While you're
proposal here.
looking for that, what's the total number of pumps we have?
21.
We have 21 and 2 new one, 23.
So we need 21 new pumps, is
No,
that?
no. We have 4 pump stations that are failing. 2 pumps on
2
each
pumps
pump
per station.
That's correct.
So
8.
we need 8,
Yeah, we purchased 2 of them now.
so we need 6.
That's correct.
My math, I'm working so far.
Yeah, so
Alright,
for
so-
example,
$50,000.
So as a backup though, my question is, these pumps that are not as good, but can we have them refurbished so that if one of these ultra ABS pumps ever fails, that we have a backup that we can immediately put in?
yeah, this is the policy that I established, because what they did in the past, they removed the pump and they gave it in trade-in. We don't have, now you go to our shop, we have 3 pumps on
We
there.
need to have them in the shop.
Yeah, that's what we refurbish the pumps and we keep it and we use it.
Are you on board with us, Dan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
This
no,
is-
you're
no,
right.
no.
We have to have spare pumps, so when you have an emergency, you don't have to depend on anybody. You just
So.
This
can
is
we
an
do-
unmitigated disaster, Gary.
That's correct.
Yeah,
This
oh,
is-
no, I'm not arguing it. What I'm saying is what's then gonna be the procedure? We need 6 pumps. Are we just gonna do 6? Or are we gonna wait for, as they deteriorate, then we're gonna, and then rebuild what we take out? Yes,
The
no?
problem that these pumps are failing is that these are high volume pumps. These are master pump stations. They are running all day long.
I thought you said they should last for many years.
They're supposed to last 10 to 15 years each pump,
I thought I said.
and they are lasting 2 to 3 or 4 years only.
There's no warranty on this then?
Yeah.
That's the
If they're
reason,
supposed to
Exactly.
last.
that's the
10 to
reason why
15.
Lee County have gone with Flight.
Lee County uses Flight and
I know they do,
ABS
and
only.
They last a lot longer.
They last longer, they are more reliable.
Then
And
why
they're
aren't
more
we
ex-
doing that?
And they're more
Well,
expensive.
I don't know who made the decision in the past, but somebody made the decision to buy the cheaper pump.
They're
Then
more-
why are we doing that in ABS instead of Light?
Well, because these are 7,500 and Flight are about 12. To my-
So we are going to buy good quality pumps now. We are not going to buy the Yugo, we are going to buy the good pump.
Are we talking the same math here? The amortization of these things, for crying out loud, so if it's $5,000 more, but we get 10 more years?
If they last 15 years, you're right.
There's the question. I was gonna wait for my.
Well, for
turn.
example, this
That's what
pump
I have.
here that have these 2 pumps, they're 25 horsepower. One of the proposals I have is $23,993. That's the pumps only.
How much?
$23,993
For one?
for 2. I should get a proposal from Flight on this
Yes,
Can you do it pretty darn quick?
yeah.
tomorrow. He told me tomorrow I will have it.
So why don't we do a thing that Bill has the right to authorize?
So that's what I was going to ask, if I can go on Monday to you and get authorization, because I will have both of the quotes.
That's my motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Did the board have trouble with this?
I have some discussion before we vote.
Okay.
Thank you.
You okay? With the emergency?
Yes, absolutely okay with that, it's just the other aspects that Yvonne mentioned in his memo, but we'll go into that.
Ron?
Yeah, you mentioned in the agenda that the existing pumps were undersized,
Mm-hmm.
and that goes back to a 2011 install.
That's correct.
Was Tetra Tech involved in that?
I don't know.
I mean, why were they undersized is my question. What were we doing?
Normally, I don't believe that Tetra Tech was involved, because Tetra Tech knows the process of selecting pump. An engineer will know.
Okay.
In fact, they were the one that helped me size this new pump here. I believe there was staff.
We were not
Yeah.
involved.
Okay, so
That was quick.
That's what I thought. I don't believe that they were not.
Danny's
because,
waiving his Fifth Amendment privilege.
Normally for you to size the pumps, you have to run hydraulic calculations.
I just want to avoid making the same mistake
Yeah.
again. I'm just
No, no,
figuring out why would we have bought undersized pumps?
I don't know. You know, he's the person that made the decision back then. I don't know who was.
Okay.
At least you were not here. You were off the hook.
Okay.
No, what I mean is lack of knowledge. When you have knowledge, you choose something that is not right.
Well, there.
And that's why you have me here, to make sure that you buy the right one.
Well, exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. And the second and final comment I want to make is with respect to your choice here. And I'm not a pump expert,
Yeah.
but I try and do my homework, as I always do. And I mean, I'm deferring to you as a long experienced Lee County engineer. Okay, and I know you probably know they use Flight,
Yes, sir.
which is the Xylem group.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, and that's their favorite. They actually have gone with Flight throughout Lee County, because it's not because they're cheap. Apparently they're about 12,000.
They are more expensive.
More compared with the 7. They last a lot longer according to the experts I've spoken to. So I agree, it's worth checking into that for the life expectancy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I presume you've suggested ABS on a price basis.
ABS, I'm pricing ABS on Flight.
Yes.
Because ABS is a good pump also.
And apparently there's Hydromatics and EMU. I'm sure you've.
I will not use Hydromatic. I have used Hydromatic in the past.
Okay.
I will stay away. There are several.
You know your job.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you've made this, and I'm just picking up on Lee County's position, saying they've gone for the Rolls Royce. Should we be considering it?
I believe that we should standardize with only 1 or 2 pumps and don't use anything but those.
And they will allow us to piggyback on Orange County and the city of Punta Gorda to get 10% discount, just for your information.
Come back on that. I didn't follow you.
Okay.
Piggyback on what?
there is a deal that Flight have with the Orange County and with the city of Punta Gorda that we could take advantage on a piggyback and get a 10%
Well, they have already
discount.
prices on that?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I'm just asking if you check into that.
I will check with Chris. You
Just
know, I
trying
know
to-
Chris, the supplier of these pumps
Trying
here
to
in
get the
this
best deal
area.
we can, that's all.
I know him for 20 years.
And typically those contracts, and that's part of the, yeah, and typically the contracts will provide that they can be, utilized by other
Yeah.
governmental entities.
I just
Yeah.
don't wanna keep, this is a kind of revolving door with you and me. We talk about single quotes, I'm trying to get the vendor prices down. We talk a lot about this and I'm trying to make sure we get the best deal we can.
Sometimes prices backfire on you, and this is what happened to us. Apparently, somebody looked at the dollar amount, but they didn't look at the quality,
Okay.
and they didn't look at the size of the
Well,
pumps.
That's great. So I'll leave it in your good hands.
Danny, do you have any other additional input?
Well, no, if I can just, word of wisdom, ABS is a great manufacturer. I do a lot of design lift stations, and I think it is good to have two, simply for the fact that you keep, if Flight is what you wanna go with, you keep it honest. A lot of utilities sole source. A lot of communities will allow multiple vendors. When it goes to a public bid, what you'll see, and you can actually go and you can verify this on your own if you'd like, but if a utility substantially larger than the size of ours were to put out a bid and they have 3 vendors that they would accept, what a manufacturer like Flight, which would be the Rolls-Royce, would do they would undermine what they would normally sell to somewhere where they sole source it, knowing that they can sole source it on the sole source bids, they can then jack that price up. So you don't wanna be caught into a situation where you're paying for somebody else's pumps.
Right.
So having, 2 in there at least keeps it honest.
Good.
And by the way, in addition to that, the new development, especially the last 2 that we have approved, in Pelican Preserve, they are using Flight pumps. That's what they put on there, so we require them to use Flight.
So what
Is-
are you gonna come and see me with?
I'm going to, as soon as I get the final proposal from both of the firms,
Okay?
I'm going to get some kind of approval so we can issue a purchase order, because it's over the limit of the
So you're gonna
cows.
make a judgment on which, and we're gonna get a purchase order for 2 pretty darn quickly, is that correct?
Yes, at least on Monday, more or less.
Is everybody
Now-
okay with that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
the-
other thing is the lease is up on the 3 cleaners, by the way, if you
What's
noticed
here
it.
in the book,
I didn't know.
you've already
it's coming up.
purchased.
I purchased, I am
This-
seeking approval
this
on that
was-
one, yes.
So we do still need to approve this?
The other 2, yeah, the other 2 pump stations.
Okay, can we go on to the next item?
Well,
We
we need
didn't-
to,
we have a-
we didn't vote on the motion on the floor. And I
Which is
wanted
to
to make
ratify.
another motion.
Yeah, we need to
No.
ratify it. Why don't we just,
The motion was that he
To-
would bring the,
No,
No.
I thought the motion was to basically ratify the one that he's already made. Gary made the motion and you seconded it.
okay, that wasn't what my understanding of the motion was, but if that's what you want it to be, we can do that.
No, wait.
well, I thought it was to,
Wasn't your
To-
motion
to
to
ratify-
bring?
Basically, my motion was to let Bill make the decision which ABS or
Okay.
Flight, his decision when he figures out, there's 2 things that you're gonna need to know, obviously. A, the price, B, the longevity.
And the warranty that I.
And the warranty.
Right.
Yes.
There you go,
Okay.
okay?
That's
And
your
that
choice.
was
That's
what
your
I
motion.
That's my
seconded.
motion.
Okay.
And that's your second?
That was my second.
Okay.
I'm fine.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0, motion's carried, thank you very
Now,
much.
I'll make a motion to ratify the emergency purchase of these 2 pumps that he brought before us. And this is separate. These have already been purchased. This was an emergency purchase and they wanted us to ratify it.
Yeah, all right, we have a motion.
So
I'll
we're
second.
already starting out with ABS
Yeah,
for 2
yeah,
and
2
Flight.
ABS,
Crap.
yes.
Crap.
Was that, Yvonne, was that stated correctly that these 2 ABS have already been purchased and you want us to ratify that?
correct.
Are they-
And 2 additional ones, is that correct?
There are 4 pumps, 230 horsepower and 225 horsepower for 2 different pump stations.
Okay, you're absolutely right, Margaret.
Have they been purchased and installed? Or are they not installed yet?
No, our staff installed them.
Oh, they're in?
So we are buying them and we will install them. We will have to hire somebody to do the electrical work in one of the stations.
I'm just asking the obvious question, have we got time to change it? Or-
Oh, no, we put ABS. ABS is a very good pump. I'm suggesting that we use ABS or
I'm not
Flight.
asking if ABS is a gun bump, I'm saying if we go with Flight, have we got time to change those two out, or is it too late?
It's too late.
Okay, thanks.
We need a second to emergency
I'll
motion.
second.
We have a motion and a second to ratify something that's already been done with an emergency. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, 5-0. Thank you, Margaret. Mainscape Irrigation Controller 5F.
Again, this is part of our capital improvement for the general fund, our refurbishment of the irrigation zones. This has been carried over, I guess, for the past 2 years. Working with Mainscape, we've found, we're trying, well, let me back up, that we did review several different controllers that they brought to us, and for the overall enhancement of the system. And brought this into the landscape committee, advisory committee, and fortunately, they are more knowledgeable than I on these, and they were able, Paul Wingard and Zane Stoneman with Mainscape, who I have here today, were able to go to the, meet with the baseline representative for this product, and be able to witness, identify, talk to the consultants and things. Zane did do the homework and brought this forward to us. They were actually, I'll let him explain more, but the committee did approve a recommendation to select this baseline 36 for the replacement of the failing controller over here at the soccer field. And in with this, we have this controller. What technically has to happen is we want to relocate where the old controller is that has been, the Band-Aids have fallen off over the years. And we want to relocate, extend the wiring, put it to a better location instead of where it exists today, and then also tie in the Ethernet to it so that it can be controlled remotely by your smartphone, and there's a $60 a year charge for that access control. What I did not include in here, and it was an oversight on my part, was the relocation of the cabling, and it's an additional $2,182. So overall, this proposal before you is not to exceed, let's just call it $16,000. The budget item for this is $22,800. This does not include all new wiring, because the wiring seems to be somewhat intact, and you have all the backup and information here. This has been going on for quite a while, a few months and things. And if you have any questions, I think Zane can answer the technical questions.
Motion to approve this item.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Questions?
Yep. So, just for two things, clarification, Bentley Electric is gonna wind up, their bill is actually gonna be something like $4,500 to $5,000, is that true?
No, theirs is the 2215
And
to
who's
put
the
in,
other?
to put in conduit and the fiber optic to make the connection. Mainscape would need another $2,187 to relocate the, where the controller sits today, to extend that cabling to a safer location over where our electrical service is and where we're gonna house the new controller.
Then why do we need Bentley Electric? And why wouldn't Bentley Electric do it? And/or why wouldn't Mainscape do the whole thing?
Well, Bentley's gonna put in the PVC conduit and run the fiber and put in the connectors for the,
I understand that.
Internet,
But
okay.
I'm just asking, why is there this additional party in there? Why can't Mainscape do the whole thing?
Well,
Zane, why don't you come here, please?
I've got a
Zane
question
Stoneman.
related to that.
That would be electrical work. I'm sure there's gonna be some permitting involved. They're coming out, they're gonna be getting Ethernet connections to us. I mean, we could look at giving a proposal for that. It's just not what we're not electricians. However, I say that, we're getting ready to move, 38 wires from one location, but it's low voltage wire.
Exactly. So you aren't an electrician, but in a way you're an electrician.
We're
and-
low voltage, yes.
Okay, all right. The thing with electricity is the fact that it seems through all of the years that I've been here, which is only 7, I won't take responsibility for anything before that. We don't really bid out the electric. It's kind of like we've got a convenient 1 or 2 vendors and we just give them the work. And I think that there should be some competition in here for that. And I think I'm supported by at least others on the board.
I have a question. Did you finish, Gary?
Yeah, go ahead.
This actually ties in with a bit of discussion that you were party to, Zane, on the audiovisual. Scott and I have talked with experts about, more recently about bringing high-speed internet here into this office. Now we're going to do this deal with Comcast, 100/20. And we're still stuck with the fiber connections from the school and the soccer complex. And directionally, I mean, I'm in the online business, I'm in the wireless business. The world is going wireless. We all have smartphones.
Right.
It seems to me sensible, why are we still, why we're still dedicated to this fiber optic solution? Why couldn't we go wireless for this transmission?
We can.
You know,
That we can do-
I'm
we
looking
can-
at the cost
yeah.
of the Bentley Electric 2215. The guy from Comcast gave Scott and I the name of a wireless expert who we intend to interview to see whether we can get away from being at the mercy of CenturyLink and Windstream with this fiber optic stuff, right, Scott? And I think we need to become more wireless educated. Have you got experience in that field?
Yeah, we can, not a lot, but this controller will do wireless. We just have to put a wireless modem in there, as long as the signal from here is
So why are we dealing with
strong
fiber
enough to
optics?
piggyback. Well, I don't know that, I didn't realize prior to, I don't know if it would work right now
Okay,
with the current setup.
I'm just wondering now, rather than just plowing into this and spending this money, wouldn't this be the time to see whether we can get a wireless solution?
Why don't we bring it back?
Yeah, I mean, we can look into
Right?
that.
Yeah, why don't we bring it back? I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. Well, that's fine.
Excellent.
Yes, excellent is right.
Margaret's suggestion, we bring it back, and we'll have to consider a wireless
Yeah.
alternative.
The situation that we have right now is as Scott's mentioned, and I never wanna get into a situation where I'm like, we gotta, but the controller, we have been putting the Band-Aids on it, they've stopped manufacturing this controller for years. We send pieces and parts to be rebuilt from California and sent back to us. The last conversation we had, they said, send us the controller. We've been manually watering the soccer fields now for several days. We can put this into motion, and the controller is built to, we can plug and play. If they wanted to do an Ethernet connection, we can do an Ethernet connection. If we wanna go wireless, we can go wireless.
It's wireless compatible.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. This is the reason why we chose this product for the property. Every manufacturer out there has products, and this is the leading product as far as there's nothing that needs to be set inside a building. It's accessible, it's wireless, everything
Is it
goes
the
through a
latest
phone.
spec for wireless,
It
like for
is.
4G?
This one is, yes. This controller, yes, I believe so.
Is it 4G?
I believe so.
I'm sure.
Can you check and make sure?
Yep,
That
yep,
was good.
yep.
Is it worth just, as Margaret suggested, could we just wait 2 weeks while we check into this wireless specification? How much would that damage your situation?
Soccer fields, we have men out there turning valves every day. So I'm manually watering valves, so we gotta, somebody's gotta sit out there and make sure we get the water. We're going into October, unfortunately, historically, one of the driest months of the year. Granted, not as hot as May, but not much rain in October, so with the amount of activity that we have on the soccer field, it concerns me. If we don't get adequate water on it, it will get torn up worse than normal. So, we have options. The other Band-Aid option we're at now is a $1,500 to $1,800 temporary, let's stick a just standard controller on the casing as we have in other areas to
I'm willing to do
get
that.
us you know, something temporarily, but that's about.
No, I'm willing to put, first of all, can't we lease one temporarily that we can, if this one is giving you that much Band-Aids, won't somebody give us a lease unit that we can put in there for a period of 30 days till we've gotten something that's really the state of the art that we wanna have?
It's a controller, I mean, they're gonna make you buy it. I mean, I'm not aware of lease options for an irrigation
How about the
controller.
manufacturer that you've been, that said send your unit back? Don't they have a
They're not a
unit that-
manufacturer, they're just rebuild boards.
Okay, so don't they have a board that we can lease for a period of time?
We don't know what's wrong with that controller. We've replaced every board and they said send us the entire controller. So they don't, at this point, we've exhausted our
We're
limits.
talking about a 2-week period to make a decision.
And I understand that, you'd like to do something like tomorrow. Probably, it sounds like you'd like to have done something yesterday. But
Yeah, we've had this out there about
I
4 or
think-
5 years.
I think we'd like to put, at this point in time, a bigger Band-Aid
Yeah.
on what's
Correct.
out there and come back with specs and something that we can ask you about, and let's do it right. I think that's what the board, it
Yeah,
sounds like to me, we'd
that's-
rather do it right than just.
Right.
How long till the wireless is here?
It's not, whether it's Ethernet or wireless,
If we can-
the
Go.
the bigger Band-Aid is going to cost almost as much as the electrician's proposal to run the Ethernet connection out there, so, I mean.
If I can help here, I think the idea here is that everybody wants to move ahead with you and give you what you need to do. But I think, Scott, it would be really great if we could either speak with this individual, Garcia, that Comcast gave us, the wireless guy, or another one, maybe Convergent can give us a wireless person. Let's have that discussion in the next 14 days. And then, unless we're satisfied that the equipment we're buying is state-of-the-art, I just want to, it's worth it for 14 days.
Yeah,
Just a
I'm a
question,
little confused.
the next meeting is 3 weeks out,
Three,
but
well,
just
21
clarification.
days.
But as I recall, Comcast won't be connecting us until.
No, this isn't
first of the
related to
year?
Comcast, this is related to, I'm trying to get rid of the fiber aspect of this and go wireless with this. Are we,
But it's.
I understand, we have fiber optic
yeah,
to the concession stand,
yes,
into the equipment room.
Yeah.
And this is running from the equipment room 50 feet
yes.
to
But you'll
where
be-
we wanna mount this new baseline
Right, and
controller.
this fiber optic that's being proposed here is fed back here and this is gonna operate on the Windstream.
Correct.
And we're gonna be stuck with Windstream until next June,
Exactly, that's
next
my
July.
point, yeah.
But it'll just be slow, but at least it's wireless slow.
Well, if
Sure.
if this unit, its baseline has a wireless component, plug and
Yeah,
play.
well, I mean,
We'd have
if
to-
the signals, I mean, I'm not
You're
an
only-
internet wireless
No,
guy.
you're only gonna
but
be
if I
as
can-
slow,
if
I
I
mean, there
can-
might be a state-of-the-art piece of gear, and you're gonna be as slow as the 8/8, which is Windstream. And until that's upgraded to Comcast,
Right.
but at least we haven't paid the money for a fiber.
That shouldn't be a
net.
problem. It depends on what I can get over here. I have a modem. We got a wireless modem and I can plug in to program it. I just don't know if it'll,
Sure.
I just don't know if it'll communicate.
And is this something we might be able to find out in the next three
Yeah,
weeks?
yeah.
Or
Yeah,
we
I
took the
can-
modem, plugged it in over
yeah,
there where
yeah,
the
yeah.
fiber is, and then it could just pick up that 50
Right,
feet.
sure.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's
all.
what we're looking at.
Margaret's right, I just think it's
It's a
worth
minor-
buying 3 weeks of time to get this right.
Let me add, I'm sorry to interrupt here. As you know, we have a project, and we are putting telemetry throughout the pump station and here in the pump station in the back. Very soon, we are going to put the first phase of the site-tech equipment. It's all telemetry. The site-tech equipment is capable of picking up the signal from the satellites and transmitting this to back here. So what we can do is work together, and I will get the contractor, BCI, that is the one that is doing the instrumentation control for us.
Okay,
Because that's what he does for a living, the
Great.
instrumentation. When I went around with him to the different pump station, he saw the satellites on there, said, I can pick this signal and send it through the telemetry. And here in the office, you can
so
do
can you
whatever
help,
with
so can
computer.
you help move this
I
ball?
I will.
Move this ball forward in the
That's
next 3
correct.
weeks?
I will get
So
with
we
them
need to
and
do.
get the DCI, and they can have a.
There you go.
We wanna help you, we wanna help you get this done,
Right, yeah.
okay?
And that's that's the whole reason why everything was like that, is just going forward, we wanted to pick the product that the entire community, because everything is deteriorating on the irrigation controller
Understood.
side of it, and so this is, we wanted to pick the right one to go forward.
I'm
into
sure the hardware is terrific, it's just the method of communication. Fiber optics is going out and wireless is coming in.
No,
Cool.
it's fully
That's all.
wireless capable. It's fully
Excellent.
wireless capable. Just
Thank-
gotta make sure I got the signal where we're pulling the wireless from.
I
So,
love it when a
Madam
plan
Chairman?
comes together,
So
don't
it
you?
goes forward to the 5th of November.
We're gonna have a busy November 5th meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Staff reports, district council.
Just a couple of items. One, the district today received in the mail the check for $25,000 from Johnson Engineering
That's what we're
as
doing.
per the settlement agreement, and it's been
Okay.
already handed to Stephen Bloom from Scott. One thing that occurred today, just notified by an email that I received from Tyler and/or Danny. Timberwood Preserve, it came to the district's attention about a month and a half ago or so, maybe a month, that Timberwood Preserve made an application to the South Florida Water Management District for a modification to their permit to increase the impervious area from 40 to 45%. And that's the district's, and Denny and Tyler, Yvonne can correct me if I'm wrong in anything of what I say. The district's permit criteria manual in that area, for that type of product, the maximum impervious area is 40%. So then we started doing some digging, found that the Lee County had processed and approved an application by WCI or their agents in the spring of this year for an administrative variance or modification to allow 45% impervious surface in Timberwood Preserve. This district was never notified of that. This district was never notified that the engineers of the WCI had applied to South Florida Water Management District for a letter modification, letter mod to the permit to change the impervious area of Timberwood Preserve from 40 to 45%. In an effort to try to get Lee County to assist us in not issuing any more certificates of occupancy, we sent a letter to, I think we mentioned, sent a letter to Lee County. We sent a letter back 2 days ago that says basically, we're looking to South Florida Water Management District, was Lee County's position. Just today, we received a letter from South Florida Water Management District, I'm not sure how Tyler or Danny received it, dated October 2nd, approving the permit modification to allow 45% impervious surface for Timberwood Preserve. Contrary to the approval Gateway has provided, contrary to the Gateway District's permit criteria manual. I would ask authorization and that in between now and October 23rd, that I work with the staff and the engineers and the manager and possibly the chairman and vice chairman for authorization, if necessary, file a permit challenge with South Florida, because we have 21 days from October 2nd. We weren't notified. We weren't on the notification list. I'm not sure how Danny or Tyler received it, but 21 days from the issuance of a South Florida permit to challenge that permit mod. And it's just disconcerting continually. WCI or their engineers do not come to the district in advance. They did not come to the district in advance prior to going to Lee County or to going to South Florida to change the impervious surface in Timberwood for 40 to 45%. That's my understanding. And I can be corrected on any of that by any members of the staff. And Tyler or Danny, can you explain how you received the letter notice today? Or the copy of the notification from South Florida?
For the record, Danny Nelson with Tetra Tech. Yeah, while we were actually here, I was preparing an email to send to Melissa Roberts, who's over permitting with South Florida, and Tyler looked it up on e-permitting, so we saw that.
And I have that in front of me, and again, to the extent we can try to file for a permit challenge, we have 21 days. We can ask for a written extension, so part of the staff may ultimately come, two things the staff may do and may want to ask board approval. One is notify WCI no more utility meters will be set or placed in Timberwood Preserve until such time as they comply with the district's permit criteria manual. The district's utility rule, as amended in 2011, has a provision that says that we will set meters and provide service, provided a number of things. One is in compliance with all district rules and regulations. And based upon what I've seen, my opinion is they're not in compliance with the permit criteria manual. Is that a fair statement, Danny?
That is an excellent statement.
Yeah. So that's one, is to, and we're in the process, we'll be notifying, with the board's concurrence, notifying WCI of that. Secondly, I think, again, may get authorization to file a request for a permit challenge extension with South Florida Water Management District if we don't get some consideration from WCI between now and October 23rd. It's just, again, it's disconcerting that they're doing this.
I have a third one.
Yes.
We send a letter to Melissa Roberts saying, excuse me, we have for the last more than 2 years been trying to meet with you and cooperate with you. Why would you ever do such a thing without notifying us?
I think that's something that could be done additionally, because that doesn't qualify as a challenge, but I'm looking at who was copied on this letter, and no one else other than Paul Montez, I believe.
Right. Now, you know, it's disappointing on the Water Management District's part, but it's concerning on the part that Whole Montez and WCI would do this and continually do this because they know the procedures.
Yeah, they do.
And I think there have been communications, prior email communications, Yvonne, with Whole Montez about the fact that the district is not happy with this, that they need to come in, make a formal submittal, ask for approval and or variation, and we've not said, we can't, and the staff can't make a recommendation to this board. The board's ultimate entity that needs to make that decision to modify the prior approval.
Right.
And that's been going on for, what, 2-3 weeks now? And they've been non-responsive. So I guess in summary and substance on the scale, or anyone else disagrees, I think the request is to authorize the staff to send that letter saying we're not gonna place any more meters because you failed to comply with the district rules, and cease placing any more meters in Timberwood Preserve. Secondly, that I work with the engineer, the manager, and the chair and vice chair if necessary to either file a petition to extend the time for filing a challenge to the permit with South Florida, or if we bump up against the October 23rd deadline, file a permit challenge. And then, again, continue to notify WC, and send a letter to Melissa Roberts saying,
For sure.
you know, we thought we had a good communications.
Yeah.
And I guess, Dan, if you want to explain, or Tyler, what the proposed change does to Timberwood and why you think you're making it.
Well, yeah, because it goes on the technical side, it goes well beyond that, and we just have concerns. So they have submitted to us, you know, their plan of action, and that is essentially, originally they had 2 separate water systems, 2 separate drainage systems. So part of it drained into a pond that went into one wetland. Part of it drained into a pond and went into another wetland. The issue was their outfall was higher than what the system was, so essentially it would flood into the road. The solution is to essentially tie the 2 ponds, lakes, in together, and outfall completely out of Timberwood. Our concern with that is, in that outfall basically goes across the street into Pine Woods and then out into the system. So we've asked simple questions to verify they're not going to negatively impact any downstream system, because it doesn't go in directly into the flowway, it goes through other communities first. So we need them to demonstrate that it's not negatively impacting that. The other thing that they did with it is they went from having 30-inch outfall pipes from the ponds into the wetlands to a single 18-inch pipe into Pine Woods. So just raises some concern. They've submitted calculations. We have a lot of questions with that. They also have significantly lowered what that outfall is. They still show a control elevation of 24, yet the outfall pipe is at elevation 21.5 or so. So I don't see how the control is at 24 if the outfall pipe is at a lower elevation. So we just have some questions, and that those emails have been going back and forth. But I don't believe officially they've submitted anything for permit criteria, have they?
For the record, Tyler Wainwright with Tetra Tech. Yes, they've submitted to Gateway, and we've responded to them and asked them more questions, and they're now responding back to us. But we
The
have not
question,
approved
Tyler,
it
has
yet.
it been a formal submittal as opposed to?
Yes,
just
it
informal?
has been a formal submittal to Gateway, which is under the review process and has not been approved yet.
Well, it's up to the board to make that decision to approve.
All right. well,
Right, we haven't recommended approval to the board yet.
So do
So-
you need a motion?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I think-
Tony's worded the motion.
Correct.
Do we have a motion
I'll
maker?
recast it to make sure, and number one, the staff be authorized, a little variation on before, to send a letter to WCI, no more meters will be placed in Timberwood Preserve, and we'll articulate the reason why, because of our belief that our rules and regulations are not being complied with, and then staff will immediately, even before that, refuse to set, not place any meters. Secondly, that I'm authorized to work with the engineer, manager, and the chair or vice chair that is appropriate and necessary to file any documents with South Florida or Division of Administrative Hearings to challenge the permit modification, letter modification that's been issued to Timberwood Preserve, and/or to file a request for an extension to see if we can work something out in the interim with WCI. And the staff be authorized to send a letter to Melissa Roberts or the appropriate person at South Florida Water Management District expressing disappointment.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Aye.
Okay?
Question, please.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Did you, in your preamble, did you mention some potential consideration? Did I hear you say that? There'll be some consideration involved? Or was I mishearing you?
Mishearing, yeah, no consideration.
Oh, okay.
I can't-
And my ears always prick
No,
up when it
and
comes to.
one thing at the end of the day, what's also, we've notified, once again, we told the county we had these issues, and they came back with a, I'll call it non-helpful, they're saying, that's up to South Florida, at the end of the day, to certify compliance. Now, South Florida is apparently issuing a modification. At some point in time, WCI would need to come to the district to accept those drainage facilities. I think that's be part of the letter to WCI also, that we have, you're in this process, you may wanna consider not continuing your work in this water management area, and/or the improvements or erecting houses until we look at this. Put the flag will be up, so that'll be in the letter.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Sorry for the unpleasant news, but it's been very distressing and disconcerting to all the staff, the approach that's been taken.
Yeah.
Anything else, Tony?
No,
Okay, district engineers.
so,
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
yeah.
Did you want to add anything before we go into this?
No, do we have the actuals on there now?
Yeah, it should be in the packet. I can just go through this. Yeah, it should be in there.
That's the revised one. You can get us.
Yeah, you gotta be careful.
I won't get a nasty note. It's a new one, it's the new one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fine. It just got the white border.
Groups and so.
No, I can just, I'll trust you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have another presentation for you today.
You said there was too much enthusiasm.
Okay, so again, for the record, my name is Tyler Wainwright. I'm with Tetra Tech. Purpose of this presentation is just to give the board an update where we're at, how we're moving forward with the lake program into the next year. So, previously we've come before this board with a prioritization list of lakes, basically saying here's the worst one, going on down to all the lakes within Gateway. About 2.5 weeks ago, myself, Danny, L, Mr. Tinkle, a couple other folks I think went out and walked a good majority of the lakes, took a look at them, and the purpose of that effort was to reprioritize them, take another look at them, see if there were some that we should shuffle around, some may be worse than others. Last time we went and looked. We did reprioritize the list of lakes. The focus of our inspections was on the residential areas. We didn't walk any golf course areas or anything like that. The list got broken down into 3 phases. The reason for the 3 phases is essentially to break it up into $5 million chunks. That's basically the reason why we went into 3 phases. Where that $5 million figure comes from is that is the amount we are currently working on the loan through the SRF program for. So that's the list we came up with. Phase 1, I think the worst lake we probably looked at was 118, 87, 116, 126, 90. A lot of those are equal level of bad that need to be repaired. So instead of trying to give each one a number, we just said this phase is all equally bad and should be repaired. And then phase 2 and phase 3. So that's how we came up with that. Go to the next one, please. So as I said, we are currently working on a facilities plan which will cover the $5 million loan through the SRF program. This loan will be for lake bank repairs only. This does not cover any water quality issues, littoral plantings, anything like that. This is just lake bank repairs as I understand it. How we came up with the costs that you saw in the previous figure there was basically we just took the bid prices that we had from the last 4, 5, 6 lakes that we did and projected that over the next few years. The $5 million figure will get you roughly 40,000 linear feet of lake bank to be repaired, which is about a third of the community, roughly.
Do lake bank repairs include littoral plantings?
No, sir. Not as currently, no.
Is there a main reason why?
I think that
was board direction.
that question was brought to the board previously. I think the board opted to not go that
Well,
route.
if we've made the decision that it's supposed to be 100%, doesn't it seem logical, I'm sorry for using that word, but logical that that should be included once we've disturbed this area and brought it back, then bringing it back brings it back with littorals for stabilization, for water quality, for, I guess I'm being too logical, huh?
Ideally, I think my personal opinion, if you were going to install littorals in lakes, yeah, you would want to do it after you repair the banks. That makes sense.
And if I can, you know, what you see in front of you, this presentation is exactly what we had talked about before. There are missing components that need to be discussed. Littorals are one, water quality, aeration, these components, I mean, we need to make a decision and direction as a board on how do we go with that. Now, we came to the board in August or July, I think even it was, when we presented originally for the facilities plan and the SRF, and it was for that more comprehensive approach.
For sure.
And the board said, no, we just want to focus on the lake bank. So yes, that was, so it was come back to us with the smaller amount on just, for the SRF, on just focusing on those lake banks. So fully agree, whatever we're going to do with that, we need to address the littoral. So that's part of what we want to have this discussion for. Also keeping in mind that everything you'll see before you is just about the lake banks. Does it have anything to do with the water quality, the littorals, aeration, chemical sampling, the bathymetrics? So those are items that.
All right, so having asked that, is that first meeting next month to include all this that's missing?
If you recall, I'm sorry, Ed Tinkle, if you recall, I delivered a 9-point plan a month ago and advising you to do just
These are
that
the points
then.
of light?
Yeah, yeah. This is why these two things need to be blended together and done in one facilities plan instead of setting and doing them in separate deals. But you got a bigger issue than that. Your issue is that I don't know why you're gonna go in and spend $100 to $110 a lineal foot putting in Armamax for erosion to go in and cut holes in it to put littorals. That is the silliest thing I've ever heard in my life. It makes no sense. You're putting in a product that's gonna take care of, with a guarantee of 20 years, your erosion issue. If your issue is water quality, address it along the wetlands and address it along the golf course. Or follow the DOs that are in the other communities that maybe don't have as serious a problem. But don't put Armamax in at that price and then punch holes in it. That makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, Armormax is like Superman, it can handle it. But we also know that you have your own opinion regarding the littorals, and you've given it to us every chance you can, that's for sure. Having stated that, are we really, in doing this, which you've done a great job, this really is something that needs to be really put together with the whole logical plan?
With the ponds group, with our standards,
Exactly.
This is all part of the big picture, we're trying to put all the pieces
Exactly.
together.
Like, shouldn't this be deferred to the next meeting?
I'd like to throw something in here. I really like what you presented here, and I'm of the opinion that this, at least what the board has approved up to now on a SRF loan is for lake bank erosion only. Okay? And in the interest of being consistent, at least from my standpoint on the board, when I heard Jeff Key 2 weeks ago, and there were, if that type of work leads to some capital spend on aeration, which is principally putting power to the pond, right? That's at least Pelican Preserve's experience. Then I'd be interested. I could be persuaded to extend the SRF loan to include aeration, but I think that I would just want to go back a few steps on this, because when I was sitting in the audience in those days, and you were proposing $700,000 a year for 5 years. Now that was just based on the information you had at the time, right? Which was the Morris Riley report, March 2014 or something.
Right.
Okay, and that's the best information we all had at the time. And I'm assuming that Morris Riley are a good outfit.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, we've got to make that assumption, otherwise the board wouldn't have hired them.
Right.
And having done that, what happened then, Danny, is that you and I got our heads together, and my interest at the time, and I'm going back to earlier in 2015, my interest at the time was to try and get my arms, I was new on the board, I was thinking, well, get my arms around this thing. This is a huge, it's a bottomless well of money if we're not careful, right? And I know you're going down a learning curve, and so am I. We all are. I didn't expect you to be an engineer that came in knowing everything from day one, because I'm sure you're learning stuff as we go, and we still are. And what we attempted to do is to put a number on this, based upon the 49 ponds that were in the Morris Riley prioritization at the time. It's important to go over this to see how we got to where we are today, I think.
Right.
And what we did with this list of 49, we assumed that, which is split into 7 tiers, right? And top 3 were critical, tiers 4 to 7 were not so critical, okay? And we assumed that we were going to put Armor Max based on $90 a foot installed on tiers 1 to 3, and we were going to then assume less percentage of the perimeter for ponds for tiers 4 to 7. And we looked at 20% and we looked at 33% of linear feet. And if we take that scenario, then the linear feet that we were supposed to then, let's say we take the 20% position. The linear feet for tiers 1, 2, and 3, which is all of the perimeter that was stated in the Morris Riley report, was 27,000 linear feet. We take 20% of the rest, and that's another 11,000, which totals 38,000 linear feet. Okay, if we take the 33% position, that 38,000 goes to 45,000. What's changed now between then and now is that let's say we take the 45,000 linear feet. The 45,000 linear feet has gone to, according to your latest prioritization list, the addition of those 3 lengths, 34, 34, and 34,
Right.
which is 103,000. So we've gone from the Morris Riley report, which is on a 33% assumption there, 45,000 linear feet, and we've gone to 103,000 linear feet. It's doubled, right? So that's one thing that's changed. That's really significant. We've like just doubled the linear footage. And the second thing that's changed is the $90 a foot has moved to $127 a foot, which is how you based your numbers. By the way, there's a number wrong. You've duplicated Lake 59 in phase 2 and phase 3.
Okay, we can correct that.
That's-
Sorry about that.
I don't mean to. I'm not playing catch up. It's only 1,300 linear feet, but it needs correcting. But my point is that we're talking about 102,000 linear feet, which is 19 miles of pond, with Armor Max, and God knows how many times we've talked about this, and I know we're still going through this learning process at 106, 7, and 8, and so on, and I don't think we're through that yet. And we've got to wait, I think, and I appreciate the comments that my colleagues have made on the board who want to move forward on this. But at the same time, this is a huge amount of money, and I'm not sure that you're sure that Armor Max is a solution everywhere.
No, and if I can just address that, and this is a little bit deceiving as you see it, because phase one, I think, is really what we're talking about in this. That's where that first initial hit is. Once you get into the phase two and the phase three, I don't think that, definitely not full lake bank, that you'll see the Armor Max, and possibly across much of it you won't see the Armor Max. Much of that can be done with possibly some coconut plantings and things like that, or coconut matting and some plants, or something less severe. Some of the areas, even just straight restoration and resodding, will be okay. Even some of the areas that we walked when we met a couple of weeks ago, and we looked at just prioritizing those first ones. Much of the areas is not horrible. Once you get beyond those first probably 7 or 8 lakes, then the rest of those, even in that phase one priority, start to kind of blend together on equal badness. So
it doesn't seem fair to me to extrapolate $127 a foot to phase 2 and 3.
No, correct. And that's just, if you were to do, I guess what this should show is, if you were to do all of the phases with Armor Max completely, it would be this cost, based on the 127. Now, as we said before, we're in the process of the pre-qualification, and I believe that those numbers, that's based on the numbers we have. The 127 is based on the numbers that we've seen. So I fully still believe that those numbers are gonna come down. So once we see that and see them more competitive, I think we're gonna have a much better success in the next rounds of actually bidding this and getting the interest through the demand star and through the pre-qualification. So I think that number will come down. So personally, I wouldn't dwell on the phase 2 and the phase 3, because we're really not even talking about that.
So
right now.
the real question that I want to ask here is, we've moved from the Morris Riley prioritization to this latest one, and it's double the linear feet. Does that mean that the Morris Riley one was faulty?
No, it was.
What does it really mean?
Well, it was based on the best information we had at the time, without going through the due diligence that we went through before and actually walking the lakes. And at the time, it was.
You hadn't done that at the time.
We hadn't done that at the time, so it was solely based on that information that we had. Now this was, we literally walked these lakes and could put our eyes on it.
The way I see this, my whole mindset on this 20-year loan has always been, which is why I started this proposal, is to try and get our arms around a 20-year project. That's the life of this thing. And so is the life of, probably, I'm guessing, aeration. I'm saying it makes sense to me to put capital items into a 20-year deal.
Yes.
It doesn't make sense to me to put what is primarily water quality stuff like plants into a 20-year loan. It doesn't, in my mind, I don't think we've really decided on how we're going to approach that. And I take Ed's point. We've got Armor Max that can withstand a hurricane. Why are we putting plants in it?
I think from a financing standpoint, I would agree that plants probably aren't the best item to finance. But at some point, littorals are going to need to be discussed.
We need to have the discussion on littorals, and I'm ready for it on March the 5th, on November the 5th. It's just for now, my head is on erosion and aeration, and if I have a great deal of respect for what you've done, and certainly what Ed's done, and as a volunteer, it's incredible the amount of learning we've all done, and I've got a lot of faith, but I can't have blind faith in engineers. I'm a business guy, and my loyalty is to the residents and the money we're spending. And just because you tell us we have to spend $60 million, I just can't go and say, yeah, well, we've got a loan for that then. Because I worry that this board and possibly future boards are going to blow through it.
Right.
Because the engineers told us to do so, and I don't buy that. I think we have to be prudent about it and take it in steps, even if it means repeating another SRF application in 5 years' time. Because I think we're going down a learning curve.
And I think the approach that you've taken so far with the $5 million, it puts you in that position. I still think you have other things that need to be addressed, and that's, we can give you guidance on those, and that of course is the water quality and aeration and those things, but that's, the board ultimately needs to make a decision on that. But as you sit right now, I think it is a baby step type situation. I wouldn't focus on the phase 2 and the phase 3 with this, because I think you're gonna take care of the majority of your problems, with that phase 1, with that
Well,
$5 million.
we haven't, Severn Trent can offer us a lot of help here in terms of other materials perhaps. Right? Ed and I have been to Heritage Farms, looked at geotube and other
Sure,
stuff.
sure.
We can save
Yes.
a ton of money, we don't have
Yes.
to go Armamax everywhere.
No, you don't. And even if you recall when Tyler presented previously, even bringing the littorals into the picture, one concept is to possibly along the golf course sides, doing something like the coconut matting and landscaping on those sides, not spending the money on the Armamax, but you're still restoring the golf course side, and that's a very inexpensive option to do.
So really, we're talking, on phase 1, we're talking Armamax, phase 2 and 3, we're not necessarily talking Armamax.
Right, I'm sure there are areas that will require that. And two, keep in mind, that's based on, again, today. So we've reprioritized this based on what we've seen in the field. 5 years from now, when we get into the next phase, this very likely will change.
It's interesting that, and by the way, Mr. Chairman, Ed
Yeah,
Tinkle
I'll
as well.
get Ed.
But there was one thing.
Pam I need to speak to, so.
Understood. Maurice Riley's report says on the 49th lake was Lake 118, and yet it's the top of your priority list. Why? Well, that seems upside down to me. Why would that be? Does that mean Maurice Riley got it wrong?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's that's not to say that's negative towards Morris Riley. Keep in mind, it's how we took their information and we interpreted it. We were solely going by what they surveyed, and they solely surveyed certain areas of the lake where there were supposedly the issues. That lake has issues beyond what Morris Riley might have even known. I think there are inherent construction issues with that. There are definitely issues with how that exists today, how it was permitted to be built, and how it was truly constructed is somewhere in between. So I think there are issues that even Morris Riley might not have known. So it's not to say that they did a bad job, but it's to say.
But you think you've done a better job now?
Well,
now
seeing
that
it in the field firsthand.
Right.
Absolutely.
That matters.
It has
Well,
issues.
But they saw it in the field firsthand too.
But our information was based on a report that they provided us, and that
Okay.
report didn't have photos. It just had the survey data.
Thank you.
Okay, Pam?
I don't have any questions.
I have two, and that is the phase 1. How long do you anticipate that you'll actually get the work done on those 13 lakes? What's the time frame?
It's multi-year. So what we've already asked for, the first step is to get two things to be done simultaneously: pre-qualification, which is a process that's already going on, and getting survey information, getting design. So we're waiting to get a price still for a survey for the first, and I believe the prioritization lakes that we had talked about previously are those first. If it's the first 5 or 6 on here.
Previously, we talked about 87, 126, 90, 124, 60, and 92. So most of the ones in the phase 1 section. And if I can add to what Danny said about the multi-year, it's somewhat dependent on how many contractors we get pre-qualified and what sort of bids we receive. So there's only X amount of time per year that we have to work on lakes.
Right.
And how aggressive you want to move forward with this. So we were envisioning just that 5 or 6 that we had talked about previously. Granting they've been slightly changed in the prioritization.
So if one vendor could theoretically, and this is just, theoretical, if one vendor could do 5 lakes in a season, and we got more than one vendor, we could theoretically do 10 lakes during a dry season.
Yes, if you want to move that aggressively. And I don't know that you do want to move that aggressively. I don't know that I would recommend, I don't know that I would or wouldn't recommend that. I think it's okay to go a little bit slow. You could, with the list we have there, you could easily do that over a couple of seasons. Because, you know, like Mr. Senior said, we're probably gonna be tweaking this a little bit as we go.
And I understand that. My concern is that the farther we get away from every time we've categorized all of these lakes, then the following year, when you look at them, it all changes. Because with the water is up really high, and that was gonna be my next question. If you looked at these not that long ago, the water levels in all the lakes were so high, you can't see what damage has been done underneath that water level. You could go out in 30 days, and this list would change dramatically depending upon what damage is underneath the water level.
I don't think in any case you're gonna be throwing good money after bad, because you're gonna be improving lakes that need it. If that prioritization changes, that's okay. But you're not gonna go and, make a repair to a lake that's in good condition.
That's true.
But I do agree that, yes, I mean, it is very difficult, during the wet season to see. And keep in mind, when we went and did this prioritization, we know those 5, 6, 7, 8, those first 10 or so, just based on what we've not only seen during this prioritization, but previously, that we feel confident with those lakes. That being said, yeah, I think, and I think we've all felt that after once the lake levels drop, we need to look at this again, and we're probably gonna need to look at it obviously more than once. And every year, it may be a little bit, different. But if a lake pops into that, top 10 list that wasn't on there previously, it's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean anybody missed anything. It means you obviously have something that's more aggressive than other lakes in terms of its worsening condition, and just needs to be addressed. But those first few, so I mean, I think that the board gave direction previously, so I don't think I would push to do all of these at one time.
No, and I wasn't suggesting that. I was just trying to get an idea of if we're gonna actually fix these 13 lakes first, how long do we anticipate that might take?
And I'll say too, don't judge on what we've seen the speed of the lakes that we've had through the piloting.
Mm-hmm.
And we have talked to vendors, and we've talked to what I believe is the vendor who has done the most amount of repair in the area, and TSI, I believe, is their name, and they do a lot of work with Lee County. They did the work on Gulf Harbor, and several others, some Bonita Bay communities. So, they've told us what their rate. I mean, in terms of speed, and I think it's 3-4 times as fast as what they've seen the work that's done here. So, you're going to have vendors that will be able to go at different pace, and some of those that do a lot more. That this is solely what they do. They're better equipped to move more rapidly. It doesn't mean that that firms like Extreme Divers aren't qualified to do it, but Extreme Divers also focuses on doing other types of work. So this isn't all they do. It's not their sole function. They don't have crews that just do this, so they're a little bit slower at it. We've seen their quality of work is really good. So
The speed at which we go about this entire project, the speed at which we're going about this project concerns me, and I'm in favour of just putting the brakes on for the following reason. The reason why we're doing this lake bank erosion is because of South Florida water management compliance. Secondly, because residential or commercial properties are losing their property, and thirdly, for water quality. Fair statement?
yes.
And the reason why we started this, what kick-started you into this 700 grand for 5 years, is because one individual from Walden Lakes complained to South Florida Water Management.
Yes.
And that resulted in an April the 4th letter of compliance from Angelica Hoffert,
Yes.
saying we need to correct that particular pond at Walden Lakes.
Correct.
And then since then it seems to me, and I don't mean to be unfair or rude, but this has become rather a monster that we've got on our hands, and it's consuming our finances. We've got to try and do a lot of good things with landscaping. We've got to obviously we've got to do this lake stuff. But there's nobody kicking us to get it done quick. It seems to me we're kicking ourselves. I mean, I'm talking about who's determining the speed at which we do this. I think this is for us to determine. It's not like we have letters of compliance that we have to deal with, right? That's chasing us.
Correct. I mean, we can't control that at this point. Those may come.
Right, and I'm not saying they won't come. I'm just saying I think we're doing everything right, but I'm just challenging the speed at which we're doing this. That's all.
I think we want to avoid getting the letters of non-compliance because I think when the water levels go down this year, we're gonna get a lot of complaints. I really do.
Yeah, and for the record, Tony Pierce, I don't disagree with that, but my experience has been with other districts where they had multiple facilities that needed attention from a lake bank erosion perspective, that as long as the district was advised that the board is going to discuss a plan, here's the plan that the board will be presented with, here's when we anticipate the board discussing the plan, they've been relatively understanding
Yes.
of a multi-year phase program. That happened down in Fiddler's Creek.
Yes.
And that, as long as they know you're working on it, they don't expect to see it overnight. Is that a fair
Absolutely,
statement?
yes, and we have our quarterly meetings with the Water Management District, and we apprise them of where we're at. And absolutely right, my experience as well is that as long as you keep them in the loop and you show them you're making progress,
Exactly.
they're gonna give you a little bit of rope. They're gonna
So
give you
presumably
some
we're going to
leniency.
wait for the water levels to drop. You're going to invite Lee County in here to take
Right.
a look at the work you've done, but that probably
Right.
won't take place till the end of the year
Uh,
or new year, right?
Probably in January.
And the reason we've gone from $90 to $127 presumably is crushed stone.
Yes.
And getting it from the street to the bank,
Right.
which is an issue. And there's going to be some issues. We've talked about creative ways to do that. But that might be a reason why we need to look at alternatives too, where we just can't. It's just not practical or it's too expensive to deliver that solution.
Absolutely.
And I'm aware of that.
And with, like I said, I think these first few you'll see will be similar to, at least recommendation will be similar to what you've seen on the repair thus far, because there's some of the worst.
Yeah.
That being said, again, I think there's an opportunity to not fully do Armor Max on all
Yeah.
four sides. I
So
believe.
I'll finish now, Margaret, but so while we're in this process of this $5 million RFP loan, I actually think we're doing it right. And I don't buy into the idea we should have gone for 10 or we should have gone for 15. I mean, there's a lot of things, we've got to be careful of the burden on the residents, and we've also got to be aware that we're all going down a learning curve. And I don't think we should rush it, even if it means going for a second application in 5 years' time. I'd rather do that than go for it all now.
I think there is, it would be advantageous to at least consider future for aeration. Even if you don't do the aeration now, at least consider where the locations for equipment might be.
Can we include that on this RFP, the SRF loan, or is that aeration? Or we've got to get the bathymetrics done and all that, right?
Yeah, I would caution you from that at this point because you don't have enough of that
Okay.
information.
I just want to be consistent with you, because I've already said I will support that, because I think it's a 20-year capital item.
Yeah, right, I think it would be, as I came in before, it included all encompassing. I think that's a great way to do it. However, with the $5 million, and not knowing on the aeration right now until you have that
Okay.
work done, don't include it. But when you actually go to bid, consider the location of equipment. That way you're not interfering with the Armor Max.
So the facilities plan that you're putting together for the SRF loan only includes lake bank erosion?
Yes.
And that's not going to change unless we give you a different direction?
Correct.
Thanks.
And I know that this is obviously got a lot of moving parts. I mean, we're not gonna do anything until the water level comes down anyway. I think this is something we need to keep bringing up and keep making sure we're refining our plan. So
Work
we've
in
got it
progress.
ready to go when we are capable. Ed, you had something you wanted to say, I think?
Yeah, just quickly. Couple of things. One, Danny's gotta be somewhat politically correct, but I don't have to be. Morris Riley's a good firm on what they were doing and what you hired them for. But they were out of their league doing what was done, and I think it showed real clearly. They didn't have a clue of what the DO was, what the requirements are, so how do you write up what lake's worse and which one's not? A blind man can walk this community and see 118 is not the 46th on the list. So I don't trust a thing they did on that ranking, but we're beyond that now. Now I believe you have a pretty good list. But relative to the issue of the Armamax, Rod, Lake 58, Margaret, your lake, up in Stony Brook, that's gonna be Armamax. I can tell you that right now. We walked
Well,
around
that's
that lake.
the
That lake's
State Road
horrible.
82.
That's
Yeah, that's a
8,500
huge
feet on
lake.
one lake.
Yep.
It's a huge
And I think as you go through here, we went out there and
That's
we
1.5
put
miles.
we put sticks in. This was after these guys left and was with Stephen. We put sticks in to try to identify the escarpment. Nothing was less than 8 inches, and we were going to 2 feet.
Yep.
You're kidding yourself if you think you're gonna come in there and do that with any quick fix. It's not gonna happen. You get some major erosion. And 118, you aren't gonna touch that lake bank for 100 or 127 a foot. That's a massive project, removing all those rocks and returning that lake bank to the way it was.
Yeah, I don't think the board understands
Massive
that. That's-
project.
that has a lot of issues beyond just.
But I would agree with you. Get the bathymetrics, and I think he's gonna go in and say that, but get the bathymetrics going at least on these first projects, so that you can at least do possibly the aeration on these first phase projects too. In other words, you're moving this thing out and taking this deal first, then this one, then this one. Wait till December, when these water levels start dropping. I saw 106, 107, 108 today, and it's getting a little scary on what I'm seeing. As that water level is receding, that stone that we have there is discoloring bad. It looks ugly. So is it something we can wash off? Because the residents are gonna be complaining about that next, so we gotta watch and see what the maintenance.
I think that's inevitable. That's just kind of
It's an issue, but you're spending a lot of money, so it's something we gotta look at. But I think the big one is that try to treat these in phase one and get those things going and do those other parts of it, of the aeration and the bathymetrics though. Add that to it.
Ed, would you mind just staying there, could I?
Can we wrap this up?
Yeah, I know, and
I'm-
we need to.
This has gone on way too long, and I've got someplace to
Quickly.
go.
Okay, Scott, on the bathymetrics, we had a discussion at the podium with Jeff Key, and I followed it up with an email to him saying, can you please summarize what his conclusions are for those 6 ponds and what action it's gonna result in? That way we know what we've got for our money. I haven't seen anything yet, and until we get that, I can't support the idea of going further with bathymetrics. I want to, but I wanna see what we're doing with the results of the first 6. I've no idea. But I agree with you, I'd like to see bathymetrics, and perhaps we can address it at the next board meeting on the first 13.
Okay, I am gonna move on now. District manager. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Actually, we're ready to start the process of soliciting under the competitive solicitation provisions for auditors. And the first question is, the board is, I assume, will be the audit review committee to be able to review firms and make a recommendation to the board. That's typically the way it is. I know that's the way you've done it in the past. Also, in your packet is the evaluation criteria, and so we just need the board to authorize proceeding with the RFP and the board, the committee to review the applications, or the submittals qualifications.
Motion?
Yep.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's all I have.
Gary, did you have anything that you wanted to bring
I
up?
just wanna know where the pool rules are.
Pool rules.
Yeah, that's what was the decision that was made earlier at the beginning of the board meeting. I've never seen any rules for the pool.
I think it was the idea that we were going to be charging residents and charging non-residents and changing the way that the pool is being
So we
operated
have no
currently.
rules.
I'm sure there are pool rules somewhere,
Where
but
are they?
I'm,
And I think it's about time we
you
find out
should
where
go
they
to
are.
the pool,
Where are they?
at the pool,
Are they?
on the bulletin
See, there
board,
becomes an I don't know.
on the bulletin board.
Why don't we ask our operations manager?
And speaking of the pool, we anticipate next month having to report to you with regards to lifeguards. Scott and I,
Great.
our firm
Thank you.
prepared some research.
Thank you.
Scott and I and Al had a very good call with the carrier
Thank you.
representative yesterday, so I think we give some clear guidance to the board on that.
Great.
And there are some rules posted.
Are there? What are they?
That was
I don't have
posted
anything.
someplace.
16.
They, I think
was
they ought to
in the
be on the
revised.
website.
That came out.
Call me crazy.
I'm sorry,
I see.
I don't have it.
It's not, it should be on there.
Management is a very tough.
Screen.
Will you, is there a, can you?
Yeah, could you put that up, Scott? Oh, it's up.
But it was a very good call with the carrier's representative.
Cool.
Very good.
You want me to introduce that?
Yeah.
You've got a copy of the financials that was submitted on the revised report. Stephen's here to answer any questions.
Did you make us money, Stephen?
I'm sorry?
Did you make us money?
I can.
Did anybody have any questions
Yes,
on that?
Stephen, I do, and I realise Gary has a tight time frame, so I'll be brief. On the enterprise fund, the balance sheet, we have 5.4 million in current assets. Okay? We talked before about reallocation of those, of what some cash that's in the bank or in the money markets to the reserve account on the enterprise fund. Are you still working on that?
Yes. Yeah, we are.
Okay, it's
Now,
not concluded yet.
yeah. What we would like to do, though, is to invest some of that money into CDs.
Yes.
We've had some discussions with
Good.
Pelican Preserve Committee on that.
Yeah.
So as well as, the enterprise, Pelican Preserve, and the general fund,
Yeah.
and the board,
What have you found?
Well, there's some pretty decent CDs. One right now, and it depends upon when action's taken, 10-month, a little bit over 1%. So right now, the money market's earning 0.19. So I was at the last Pelican Preserve meeting, had discussions with them. They're on board. They'll be presenting you guys with their recommendation, and then my recommendation is to move with CDs as quickly as possible.
Good.
Okay, and,
But to answer your question, and I apologize, one of the reasons why these financials are running a little bit late is we started to add those reserve schedules that we're going to be talking about, and it's on page 186 and 187.
Right.
That will lead us to determine how much we want to move into what is considered a fixed asset account.
and just to make sure I understand, there is a movable firewall between enterprise fund money and general fund money,
Yes.
and we can't move, there's no circumstances under which we can transfer some to the general fund.
Well, you are already sharing costs right now.
Yes.
And in essence, you are doing that. But,
Yeah.
Beyond that, again, it's
But
about
that's based upon
justification.
reality.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But the law is that we can't shift funds from one to the other.
The idea, that's the purpose for these funds, is to
Okay.
separate this money for specific purposes that are outlined within the
Okay.
fund.
Thank you. I've got no more questions, Stephen.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for doing the revenue and expense and for bringing it forward. It works out really well.
No problem.
Rod, did you have any supervisor comments?
Yeah, just one. Scott, where are we? Where is Anthony on checking out some other solar heating quotes other than advanced solar? Do you know? Is he working on it still?
I don't have an update for you.
Okay, maybe next
I'll check
meeting.
it.
Thank you. And the last question is related to the very first. How we started at 3 o'clock. There are a lot of plastic cards out there for this pool, and I'm not talking about user fees here, that's dead. but I'm talking about business controls. When I first asked the question about controlling our facility there, I wasn't terribly convinced that we know how many cards are out there and who's got them, and by names and address. Do you have all that? I just want to know whether we're keeping it, whether we should.
We do have that information,
Have you got the address of everybody who has a card and are those addresses current?
to the best of my knowledge, yes, and I'll be putting that in my report.
Great, because the feedback I'm getting from people is they really would prefer non-residents to be in here, and I'm just wondering if by reissuing cards or getting a current driving license and current utility bill, that will verify that this is a resident facility only.
And that's how it's done.
Great, thank you.
And I have nothing, so I'm going, oh,
Just,
yes.
you can't have a policy that says non-gateway people aren't allowed to use the pool. But
Correct.
what you can do is, to take your revenue picture forward, you can charge non-residents.
You can have priorities and rate differentials.
Right.
That's correct.
And the rate for residents is zero, because they pay it within their special assessments.
Well, the atmosphere earlier wasn't correct to start bringing all that up, but I do think that's the way to discourage, because that's what the residents want, in terms of the feedback I've got. They want to discourage non-residents, we can do it through fees.
Yes.
And that's your point?
Yes.
And I'm prepared to have that discussion if the board is at a future date. But we can't stop non-residents legally, because we're a public governmental entity.
As a public pool, we have certain regulatory control over our facility. And part of that is prioritization of use, I would say, arguably. I mean, I haven't researched this in a while, but a rate differential for residents versus non-residents.
Okay.
It's like if I live in the unincorporated area of Collier County, if I want to use a City of Naples pool, I may have to pay a different fee
Yeah.
than I would if I was a City of Naples resident, 'cause I'm paying ad valorem taxes and other monies into the general fund.
Okay.
Adjourn.
We are now officially adjourned.
Take care. Yes, sir.
Before you leave, young lady. Sign
Vice
that?
Chair.
I sent a letter to, copied you, to Vista
Pen?
Logics.